Hey guys, tonight we're slipping through time, back to a world where the hum of neon lights and the buzz of your phone are replaced by the steady whisper of wind through rice fields. The stars stretch above you like an ink painting, and somewhere in the distance, a wooden bell tolls the dawn. You wake up lying on a straw mat in a farmhouse that smells faintly of smoke and sweat. A paper wall slides open with a creak, and suddenly you're face to face with feudal Japan, a place where one misplaced word can cost you your life. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights and livelihoods, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes and blink at the dim grey light seeping through rice paper windows. The air is cool, almost too still, broken only by the faint crackle of a charcoal brazier. The first thing you notice is silence. Not the peaceful kind you get when you mute your phone, but the raw, absolute quiet of a world without engines or electricity. Even the birds outside sound careful, like they've learned to respect the social order too. Your back protests as you sit up. The tatami mat beneath you, woven from rush grass, scratches your skin, and the faint smell of old straw fills your nose. The farmhouse is playing rough beams, low ceiling, and barely enough space to stretch your legs. Everything feels oddly small, built to keep heat in and heads low. Beside you sits a folded robe that's seen a few too many washings and a curious pillow filled with grain husks. You're not in a museum diorama. This is home now, at least for the night. A rooster outside announces morning with a scream that sounds vaguely judgmental. Moments later, a woman, probably the matriarch of this house, slides the paper door aside and bows stiffly. You return the gesture, uncertain of etiquette, and she studies you with polite confusion. Around her move 3 children, already sweeping the dirt floor with meticulous rhythm. You realize quickly that waking up late isn't a thing here. When the sun rises, you rise or risk being labeled lazy. Social death. Centuries before Reddit invented public shaming. You try to stand, but your knees don't love the idea. The air is colder than you expect, sneaking through gaps in the walls. Despite the chill, no one seems to crave warmth. Instead, they move with quiet purpose. Folding bedding, tending the fire, fetching water from a wooden pail outside. You follow them, barefoot onto packed earth. The chill bites, but the sunrise is hypnotic. Mist hangs low over square rice paddies bordered by dirt paths. Somewhere far off, temple bells echo, long and melancholy, reminding villagers that time isn't theirs to command. A man appears at the edge of the field, lean, wrapped in layered cotton that flaps softly in the breeze. He's the father of the household, you think, because the others bow slightly as he steps past. His expression is neither kind nor cruel, just focused. The look of someone who measures worth in harvest yield. He says something you half understand, probably asking who you are and why you're standing like a confused ghost. Through pantomime and half-words, you figure it out. You're supposed to help with something. Everyone, it turns out, helps with something. Even the elderly do chores that keep them from slipping into debt or shame. In feudal Japan, idleness equals danger. Every motion here feeds the whole, or feeds the tax collector. You soon learn one mainstream facting during the Edo period. Over 80% of the population were peasants tied to agricultural labor. Most worked land they didn't own. Rice wasn't just food, it was currency, taxation, and social status rolled into one grain. The government even measured wealth by koku, the amount of rice needed to feed one man for a year. You're lucky if you get enough for breakfast. As you look across the paddies, shimmering with dew, a quirky detail slips into focus. The villagers hang shiny, twisted strips of metal from poles near the field edges. At first you think they're decoration, but the farmer explains they're meant to ward off birds. Early scarecrows made from old utensils. Historians still argue whether these were practical inventions or just superstitious relics, but the birds seem unconvinced either way. The morning deepens. Smoke snakes from kitchen huts nearby as families prepare breakfast, watery rice porridge, a sprinkle of salty pickles, maybe a few greens. You're invited to sit cross-legged around the hearth, a sunken pit filled with slow-burning coals. Someone ladles a bowl into your hands. It's hot and bland, the taste of humble survival. You glance around, unsure if you should wait for a cue. Everyone starts eating together, quietly, reverently, as if chewing too loudly might offend the house spirits. Outside, the faint rhythm of a wooden clapper drifts across the wind. It's a local watchman, announcing dawn to neighboring farms and making sure no fires burned overnight. The sound is oddly comforting, a reminder that the world, though different, still keeps time. And yet, beneath the peace, you feel an undertone of tension. No one talks about the Lord directly, but his presence hums in every conversation like background static. Peasants live under the distant but absolute gaze of their daimyo, regional lords who own everything, including you. Taxes, measured in rice sacks, arrive without mercy. Some families barely survive after paying their quota, and any shortfall is met with public shame or punishment. You watch one child carry a miniature bucket to the well, barefoot, hair tied up, face serious. Life here begins young. By 10, most children already know how to plant and harvest. By 15, their hands look older than their faces. You realize how soft your own palms are, city-born and blamelessly lazy. A sudden gust rattles the bamboo fence, startling the chickens. Everyone freezes briefly, scanning the sky as though expecting something. A storm, maybe, or a messenger bringing new edicts. It passes, and the mother chuckles softly, breaking the spell. You smile too, though your throat feels dry. This is their normal, perpetual readiness wrapped in calm routine. Later, when you stretch in the doorway, you glimpse a shrine tucked behind the house. A simple stone slab, a dish of rice grains and a few wilted flowers. You bow awkwardly, because that's what everyone does. The small rituals soothe you, linking hands of centuries through modest gestures. You spend one last moment gazing at the landscape, the faint shimmer of mountains on the horizon, the old rhythm of bell and wind. You take a breath of clean air that somehow smells of dust, wood, and history. Somewhere deep inside, you start to understand this world runs not on electricity, but on obligation. Every bow, every breath, every grain measured in silence. Your neck aches slightly from kneeling too long, and the family starts bustling again, sweeping, bundling, carrying, always moving. The man glances back once more, gives you a nod, that's both invitation and warning, and disappears into the morning glare. You're awake, and livelihoods, but already you sense that in feudal Japan staying alive might be the hardest dream of all. The next morning arrives, not with an alarm clock, but with the groaning song of a temple bell rolling down the valley, heavy as the mist still clinging to the rice paddies. You're already half awake, stiff from sleeping on straw, and still unconvinced that this futon counts as bedding. Outside, the world is tinted grey-blue, pre-dawn, the hour when even roosters pause for breath. The farmer's wife pads silently into the room. She kneels beside the hearth, strikes flint against steel, and coaxes orange light from cold coals. You smell it before you see it, then rice gruel simmering in iron pot, floating bits of pickled radish, and the faintest whiff of miso. It's not breakfast so much as edible warmth, but your stomach doesn't argue. You shuffle toward the hearth as the family gathers. The father's hair is tied into a topknot, but his clothes are patched with more care than fashion. The children sit neatly, small hands folded, eyes trained on the steam. There's no chatter, no joking. Eating here is ritual. Deliberate, quiet, communal. When the first bowl is offered to you, you bow and accept it with both hands. The rice gruel tastes like salty water infused with vague hopes and carbohydrates. A cat twitches near the doorway, eyeing you what feels like historical accuracy, complete indifference. You notice that everything in this house has a use. No decoration for decoration's sake. The sparse interior isn't poverty alone, it's also philosophy. In Zen-influenced culture, simplicity is virtue and waste is sin. The idea of minimalism, centuries before Pinterest made it cool. The father catches you glancing toward the window. Through the mist, farmers are already trudging toward the fields, hoes slung across their shoulders like solemn instruments. You sense the rhythm of life here. Sunrise means labor, not leisure. No, quiet quitting in feudal Japan. If you don't show up, the tax collector will. As you finish the last mouthful of gruel, she slides the bowl away. Steam curls into the rafters while a child wipes the table with a woven cloth. Then, almost ceremonially, everyone stands. The father gives a nod. Time for work. But before heading out, the family kneels near the doorway before a small household shrine, offering silent thanks to the gods for food and survival. It's a moment of beauty and burden intertwined. Gratitude measured by necessity. You can't help noticing another sounding, a steady clack-clack of a wooden hashigi echoing through the village lanes. It's the night watchman announcing the new day. His rhythm is hypnotic, both comforting and foreboding, as if he's reminding everyone that peace is conditional. In feudal Japan, even calm has rules. Stepping outside, you're greeted by a world washed in pale light. Dew glistens on the rice stalks like 1,000 tiny mirrors. You feel the chill instantly, a sharp nip that travels through your thin cotton robe. A wooden bucket waits by the well, and you quickly realize there's no such thing as hot morning showers. The water is glacial, exhilarating, and mildly traumatic. You splash your face and feel alive, then immediately regret it. The farmer's wife laughs softly, not mockery, just the gentle amusement of someone who's seen soft hands before. She points toward the fields, indicating the routine. You're going to learn farming the old-school way. Along the path, villagers move like clockwork, carrying tools, balancing poles against shoulders, signaling greetings with brief nods. There's an efficiency born of scarcity. No energy wasted on chatter unless needed. Everyone knows their role. Generations trained into the rhythm of labor. A mainstream fact slips into mind during Japan's Edo period. The government enforced strict social order. Each class, samurai, peasants, artisans, and livelihoods, was locked into legal stratification known as the Shi no Ko shell hierarchy. Farmers ranked technically above artisans and merchants because they produced food, but wealth rarely matched rank. The samurai took rice taxes, peasants kept only what they could hide. You, meanwhile, try to keep up as the farmer guides you into shin-deep mud. The rice paddy is a mirror reflecting scattered clouds and your growing regret. Every step makes a rude squelch that sounds louder than it should, and soon your legs ache. The farmer laughs and corrects your stance with a tap of his hoe. Feet together, bend low, move slow, like you're dancing with the earth. It's strangely meditative. You start to understand why ancient Japanese poetry worshipped seasons. When you live this close to soil and water, time isn't minutes, it's cycles. Then comes a fringe discovering as you work. You spot small charms tied to posts along the field, tiny cloth bundles stuffed with rice and salt. The farmer tells you they ward off tanuki, mischievous raccoon spirits known for stealing food and playing tricks after dark. Historians still argue whether villagers genuinely believed in tanuki magic or just used the superstition as a playful excuse for missing food. Either way it works. Guhul, no supernatural theft so far. Hours pass measured by the ringing of distant bells. Sweat trickles down your back, mingling with mud until you no longer know where earth ends and skin begins. Sunlight burns through the mist, and dragonflies shimmer above the paddies like sparks. Your body is exhausted, but there's a strange peace in repetition. Plant, step, breathe, plant. Around midday, the bell rings again. Mealtime. The family gathers beneath a small tree. Lunch is humble. barley balls, pickled plums, and more of that miraculous gruel. But the view makes it feel noble. From here, the valley stretches into a patchwork of terraces. Smoke rises from distant huts, and the faint cry of a hawk drifts overhead. You think about how entire lifetimes here unfold within walking distance. The idea of travel without passports, luggage, or digital maps feels unthinkable now. But for these villagers, the next province might as well be the moon. The father leans back, shaded by a straw hat, and eyes the horizon. After a while, he begins humming. Low and rhythmic, the melody resembles a work chant, half prayer, half meditation. When you close your eyes, you almost forget what century you're in. Yet peace doesn't linger long. Every villager's calm hides quiet fear. A tax notice, an unpredictable harvest, a samurai patrol, a wrong glance, an overheard complaint could ruin a family. Feudal order runs deeper than rivers. Still, there's resilience, an endurance you can feel through the dirt under your nails. As day fades, you follow the family home. The air cools, brushing your damp clothes until they stiffen with drying mud. Children chase fireflies near the lanes, laughter rising and falling like notes on a flute. Someone beats a drum near the temple, the sign of evening prayers. Lanterns flicker to life one by one, turning the village into a constellation of trembling amber light. You rinse your hands in the well. Your reflection wavers, a stranger watching from centuries away. The family invites you in again. Dinner is a repeat of breakfast, but somehow richer. Hunger always improves flavor. As you sit cross-legged, you think about the sheer precision of this existence. Every sound, the bell, the clapper, the cicada drone, belongs exactly where it should. Life revolves around necessity, yet there's a quiet poetry in it. Tomorrow, you'll rise again with the bell, but for now, you let your shoulders drop, listening to the rhythmic breath of a world that never needed clocks to keep its heartbeat steady. The sun doesn't wait politely in feudal Japan. It climbs, glowing like molten copper, and everyone follows its lead whether they want to or not. By the time you stumble out the sliding door, villagers are already bent double in the paddies, their reflections wobbling in the shallow water like ghosts trapped under the sky. You squint into the glare and realize this life here is not just hard, it's endless repetition dressed as duty. The farmer's wife greets you with a faint nod, already carrying baskets of seedlings on her shoulders. You offer to help, and she grins in that way people do when they know you have no idea what's coming. The air feels thick, heavy with humidity and the faint musk of manure. Cicadas scream from the trees, an orchestra of frenzy that drowns out your thoughts. As you kneel in the field, your fingers sink into the mud with a squish that you try not to think too much about. The water is warm, the sludge thick and alive with tiny wriggling things. You plant seedlings one by one, pressing them into perfect rows while your back begins plotting revenge. The rhythm is hypnotic at first. Bend, press, lift. But soon, your arms ache, your legs tremble, and every breath feels heavier than the last. The farmer works beside you, silent and precise. You notice how he keeps his sleeves tied up, his movements exact, his patience almost supernatural. He's been doing this since childhood, maybe since the first tooth fell out. Generations of muscle memory roll through him like the heat shimmer on the fields. A mainstream fact bubbles up in your tired brain. During the Tokugawa era, Japan's rural economy was meticulously structured. Farmers didn't just grow rice for themselves, they cultivated wealth for the ruling samurai class. Around 40% of each harvest went directly to taxes, and another chunk paid for local duties. So much rice that by the time the granaries were full, the farmers themselves often ran on fumes. You look down at your dirty hands and imagine how despair must sit quietly inside people, passed from parent to child like seed stock. Yet somehow, the village survives, century after century. A rooster crows again, or maybe angrily protests the heat, and the farmer straightens to stretch his spine. He glances at you, sweat trailing from his jaw, and grins. You've earned his mild amusement, which in this world might count as friendship. From the edge of the field, a child calls out in excitement. She's pointing at something shiny buried in the mud. When you wade over, she hands you a smooth, blackened coin. It's covered in grime, but the farmer squints and mutters a name Kenite Soul, a common copper coin from decades ago. He tucks it into a pouch tied to his belt, saying something about good fortune. Then, lowering his voice, he tells you a quirky story. Some villagers bury old coins under their rice fields to trick the spirits of poverty, ensuring prosperity. Historians still argue whether these acts were mystical protection or primitive investment banking, but you decide not to question superstitions that keep people hopeful. By mid-morning the heat turns brutal. The straw hat you borrowed does little against the glare. The sound of frogs rises from the irrigation canals, a chorus thick and relentless. The farmer gestures toward a nearby hut perched on stilts above the fields. You both climb the ladder to rest in the shadow, where bamboo mats ripple with breeze. Inside hangs a faint smell of damp straw and fermented grain. It feels like sitting inside the breath of summer itself. The farmer offers you a gourd filled with water. You gulp greedily, ignoring the slight taste of metal and alga. He laughs, then joins you in silence. Sweat drips down both your temples. For a while, no one speaks. The only sound is the rustle of rice leaves swaying in time with the wind. You gaze out at the pattern of paddies stretching endlessly, a geometry of survival. Fleas dance in the light, dragonflies flicker over the mirror like pools, and far off, a line of women in wide hats plant with synchronized precision. There's something deeply human about the scene, hard labor conducted with ritual-like grace. By afternoon, the family calls for lunch. Today's meal is a handful of barley rice mixed with tiny dried fish. You chew slowly while sitting on a flat rock near the field. The farmer's daughter hums a tune, a children's song about frogs that sounds suspiciously like a complaint about chores wrapped in rhyme. You can almost picture a kid back home whining about homework. Some human habits never change. Further down the field, you notice another group of villagers building a small embankment. Curiosity drags you closer. They're patching the irrigation channel using straw ropes, wooden stakes, and sheer stubborn will. The canal carries life. If it breaks, entire harvests die. One man, older and wiry, uses his bare feet to tamp down mud while barking orders sharp enough to slice dragonflies in midair. You join tentatively, pushing heavy clay into place, feeling your muscles scream in languages evolution forgot. When the work ends, you expect applause. What you get instead is more work. The women start airing bundles of thatch for roofing repair, and the farmer motions for you to help shift them. You try lifting a bunch, but it's heavier than it looks. He chuckles, muttering something that could mean city hands. You're too tired to care. A boy nearby shows you a trick. He uses a sharp reed stem to whistle a bird call. The sound is uncanny, like a sparrow announcing lunch. The farmer explains that villagers use such calls to scare pests from the crops. You try, fail miserably, and accidentally summon laughter instead. It's the kindest noise you've heard all day. As the sun sinks lower, the land changes color, gold through amber into rust. Shadows stretch long, painting the fields in alternating ribbons of warmth and darkness. You kneel for the last time, hands numb and raw. The rows of seedlings gleam under the fading sky like new hope planted in mud. Back in the village, the evening bell tolls again, livelihoods echoing against hills that cradle the settlement like an ancient bowl. The farmer's wife wipes sweat from her brow, watching her kids chase each other around the well. They've been playing with scraps of straw, pretending it's sword fighting. For a moment, you think about how play, even here, mirrors survival, pretending strength until you grow into it. Inside the home, the fire crackles to life once more. Dinner is the same staply rice, miso, pickles, sameness wrapped in necessity. The family eats contentedly while the wind hums through the bamboo walls. You stare into the flames and feel time stretch out like melted amber. Somewhere outside, an owl hoots. The sound is lonely, soothing. A sound that might be older than rice itself. You close your eyes, listening as if the past is speaking directly through its rhythm. Fatigue pulls at your limbs, and you realize that today wasn't just work. It was survival training under the calendar of nature. The farmer glances up once more before extinguishing the lantern. He nods slightly, approval, or simply recognition that you made it through another day. You smile faintly, half asleep already. The last thing you remember before dreams claim you is the flickering glow of embers and the damp scent of rice fields whispering outside. Patient, eternal, waiting for dawn to summon you again. By now, you think you've earned a quiet morning, maybe even one without mud, but feudal Japan doesn't do lazy Sundays or weekends at all. The rooster crows like a referee calling time on your brief fantasy of rest. The air feels thick already, the kind that clings to your neck before the sun's even up. The farmer's family is on their feet again, silent and in rhythm, like one heartbeat moving through several bodies. You've stopped trying to keep up, you just try not to fall behind. Today, the farmer's wife informs you, and livelihoods, you're going to help deliver rice dues to the local steward. You're not sure what that means, but the tone suggests tax day. She hands you a bundle wrapped in cloth, surprisingly heavy, the weight of collective labor tied in knots. Through the window, you watch other villagers gathering bundles too. Each carries the same quiet dread and lie like students walking into exams they know they'll fail anyway. You follow them along a dirt path that winds uphill toward what might generously be called the village office, though it looks more like an overground shed guarded by disapproving crows. A banner flaps above the doorway, inked with the crest of the local daimyo. Beneath it stands the tax steward, a thin man in polished robes far too clean for actual work. His face is neutral, but his eyes skim everyone like tally marks. The villagers kneel in a line, setting down their rice bundles with both hands. You copy them a second too late, earning a quick glance from the steward that feels like a verbal sting. The air hums with tension. No one speaks unless spoken to. You realize that this is what hierarchy looks like in motion, a living system of bows and silences. When it's your turn, the steward inspects your bundle, takes a single grain between his fingers and smashes it like he's testing its loyalty. Then he writes something with a brush on a thin wooden tag, ties it to the cloth and tosses it aside. Approved. You resist the urge to sigh audibly. That single interaction tells you everything about status here. Social rank isn't just about wealth. It's choreography. Who kneels first, who speaks last, who gets to walk on the clean side of the road. Even the air feels tired. You later learn the Japanese called this structure the maibunsi, a formal hierarchy dividing society into four classes: samurai, peasants, artisans and merchants. Below them sat outcasts, and above them, the invisible gaze of the shogun and emperor. You, of course, belong somewhere between unclassified and future ghost. As you leave the office, an elderly man whispers a reminder: never make eye contact with samurai. It's not just rude, it's dangerous. They possess the legal right of kirisugamen, permission to cut and leave. In simpler terms, if a samurai feels disrespected, he can literally slice you down where you stand. The concept terrifies you, though the villager shrugs it off with wary acceptance, as if he's describing bad weather. Closer to the road, you spot one of these warriors in the distance. His armor gleams under the sunlight, lacquered leather plates overlapping like dragon scales, cords dyed crimson. His presence draws every gaze downward. He walks deliberately, sword swinging with the grace of someone who's never worried about consequences. The hair on your neck prickles. Don't look, a woman murmurs beside you, bowing low. You immediately follow suit. The samurai passes, silent as shadow, yet you can feel the air shift. Every villager holding their breath until he's gone. That pressure lingers, like the aftertaste of lightning. A mainstream fact floats through your mind: Japan's samurai made up less than 10% of the population, but wielded near total authority. Many served as officials or minor bureaucrats, enforcing samurai law through a mix of blade and calligraphy. Their word could alter lives faster than their sword could. Back in the village, you're grateful for familiar faces and the relative safety of anonymity. The farmer chuckles when you retell your panic. "You're learning," he says, in what might be the ancient version of "Welcome to Adulthood." Later that day, the air thickens again as you help repair the communal storehouse. You're finally allowed onto one of the supporting beams, hammering wooden pegs with a mallet that feels 2 centuries from ergonomic design. The local carpenter oversees the work, thin, sharp-eyed, hands permanently tattooed by calluses. He speaks little but moves with precision that borders on artistry. During a break, he points toward the distant hills and explains how the land is measured. Not in acres, but in tan, the area one person can cultivate with a single ox in a day. Property and status are mathematical equations carved into dirt. You nod, pretending you understand, but mostly you admire how seriously everyone takes every handful of soil. Then, a quirky story emerges from the carpentering. He once watched a local magistrate argue with a priest about whether a certain rice paddy belonged to the temple or the samurai clan. To settle it, they invited a monk allegedly able to hear the voice of water. The monk listened, declared the stream favored the temple, and the matter ended. Historians still argue whether this tale represents superstition, politics, or an early PR stunt, but you kind of love it either way. That evening, as twilight filters through the mountains, the farmer's family and a few neighbors gather near the communal well. Someone passes around a small gourd of sake, and laughter rises for the first time in days. Even here, joy finds tiny cracks to bloom through. You sip hesitantly. The drink burns, fragrant with rice and smoke, and your body melts one exhale at a time. The conversation drifts between harvest gossip and minor scandals. Who lost a sandal in the river? Whose cow wandered into the temple garden again? For the first time, you hear laughter that feels unguarded. These people live under chains of hierarchy, but within those boundaries, they carve little freedoms, shared smiles, quiet rebellion through joy. The farmer's wife teases you about your clumsy bow form. "Too tall," she says. "The ground won't run away." You laugh, the sound surprising even to yourself. As night deepens, paper lanterns glow around the well, painting soft halos on faces warmed by drink and companionship. Crickets begin their nightly concert, and the world feels steadier again. The hierarchy hasn't vanished. It never will. But for this brief moment, humanity slips between the cracks of structure. You stretch, the muscles of the day pulsing faintly, and glance toward the dark silhouette of that samurai road. Somewhere beyond it, power still prowls. But here, beside the laughter and the fireflies, you breathe a little easier. Surviving this world one bough, one grain of rice, one shared smile at a time. Morning arrives, shrouded in fog so thick it turns the entire village into a watercolor painting. You step out from the farmhouse, rubbing your eyes, expecting the usual soft chatter and scraping of wooden sandals. Instead, the air carries something sharper, a sense of order, of presence. Then you see them. A small procession of samurai moves slowly along the main path, the mist curling around their armor like stage smoke. Their helmets are polished, crests glinting faintly in the half-light. 2 carry spears, one bears an enormous lacquered conical hat, and the leader, probably an officer, walks with both hands resting lightly on his sword. The villagers freeze mid-motion. Conversations die. Even dogs seem to remember their manners. You glance to the farmer beside you. His shoulders lower a few degrees, an instinctive bow. You copy him, hesitant, hoping the mud stains on your robe don't count as a sign of disrespect. The samurai pass without a word, but the sound of their sandals, the crisp thud of authority, stays beating in your ears like a metronome of survival. When they disappear over the hill, the farmer exhales through his nose. Inspection, he mutters. Always after harvest. You nod as though you understand, but you really don't. Then the reality settles in. Those swords hanging at their waists aren't decorations. They're government paperwork with edges. Later, over breakfast, the farmer explains the concept of Bushid, the way of the warrior. It's more than fancy swordsmanship. It's a code combining discipline, honor, loyalty, and just enough existential dread to keep samurai awake all night, polishing their souls. They live by strict ideals, so never show fear, never betray your lord, never die without purpose. You imagine trying to live by those rules and conclude you'd last maybe 5 minutes. One mainstream fact drifts into your thoughts as you listing samurai training began as early as childhood. By 7 or 8, boys practiced archery and horseback riding. By 12, they learned sword kata and memorized teachings like hagakure, a manual reminding them that the way of the samurai is found in death. You stir your rice porridge quietly, thinking that modern motivational posters could never compete with that level of commitment. By mid-morning, the fog lifts, yet the unease lingers. The father decides to take you along to deliver supplies to the local guardhouse. He seems half curious, half testing how long the guest from nowhere can survive real errands. You agree before realizing guardhouse means climbing several kilometers uphill on dirt paths that refuse to end. The journey winds through cedar forests so tall they feel like cathedral pillars. Between the trees, you spot votive tablets tied with faded ribbons, wishes left by travelers begging safe passage. As you pause to catch your breath, the farmer chuckles. You walk like a merchant, he says. All money, no muscle. You reply, panting, all sarcasm, no mercy. He laughs, a rare sound, deep and surprising. The guardhouse peaks from a cliffside, half-fort, half-watchtower. 2 samurai stand outside, one sharpening his blade against a whetstone, the other sipping tea like a man who's mastered tension as a lifestyle. They nod curtly as the farmer bows. When it's your turn, your knees forget which direction bending works and you almost topple. The guards exchange glances but say nothing. Inside, you help unload bags of dried fish, miso and sake bottles. The officer in charge, a man with lines carved by both time and moral fatigue, asks a few questions in clipped tones. His sword rests beside him like punctuation. While the farmer answers, you stare discreetly at the set of armor displayed near the wall. It gleams black with gold rivets, the lacquer flawless. You wonder how many lives it's seen end. Then you notice something small but strange. A simple folding fan tucked at the armor's base, painted with a puny. The officer catches your look and smiles faintly. For peace, he says, perhaps teasing. A warrior holds death in one hand, beauty in the other. You nod, unsure whether to find that poetic or horrifying, maybe both. When business ends, the officer insists you stay for tea. The ritual unfolds slow enough to hypnotize. You observe the gesturous sleeve adjustments, measured pause, the faint sound of whisk against ceramic. There's a composure in it, a deliberate way of controlling chaos. The officer explains that every motion in the tea ceremony mirrors discipline on the battlefield. Stillness can be sharper than steel. He shares a fringe anecdote between sips apparently. Some samurai trained to test their swords on condemned corpses, a practice called tame shijari. The cuts were recorded on the blade tang as proof of skill. Historians still argue whether this was standard practice or just grim legend. But you decide not to ask for a demonstration. As the farmer bows farewell, you can't help stealing one last glimpse of the samurai's expression. Beneath the calm lies exhaustion. You suspect even men allowed to kill with honor must wrestle their own sleepless ghosts. Back in the village, the mood shifts. People loosen their posture again. The rice wine reappears quietly, as though laughter must be rationed until danger leaves sight. You sit by the well, muscles aching, trying to make sense of a code that chooses death over embarrassment. The farmer's youngest son sits beside you. He's maybe 8, holding a stick like a sword. "When I grow up," he says, "I'll earn a katana." You smile weakly. "You sure about that?" He nods confidently. "Then I'll protect my family." His conviction is pure fire, innocent of everything that word costs. You tussle his hair, but under your breath, you whisper a silent hoping may he never have to prove it. That night, sleep finds you late. The image of the samurai procession loops over and over. The weight of quiet authority, the grim poetry of their creed. The wind stirs the shutters, whispering through gaps like the ghosts of blades unsheathed. You pull the blanket tighter and think, again, that maybe honor and survival don't always travel in the same direction, but somewhere deep down, you also sense the faint pull of admiration. The discipline, the certainty, the paradox of living every moment ready to die. Maybe there's a strange beauty in that kind of clarity, even if it comes wrapped in steel and silence. The next morning, the world feels unusually quiet, as if even the cicadas are waiting to see what happens next. And livelihoods. You're still shaking the image of samurai armor from your head when the farmer tells you that you're heading to the daimyo's lands today. Your hand stopped mid-bowl of rice. The daimyo, the regional lord, is to feudal Japan what thunder is to a storm, distant, uncontrollable, and best admired from very far away. You try to decline politely, but he waves you off. "Everyone must go sometimes," he says simply, sliding a bamboo hat toward you. The rice doesn't deliver itself. And just like that, your fate is sealed with a smile. The road to the daimyo's manor winds through hills quilted with terraces. Mist clings to the valleys, softening the edges of cedar groves. After an hour of tramp and trudge, you realize why nobody skips leg day here. Those who do simply don't survive the climb. Farmers, merchants, and messengers join your small group, all bowing slightly to passers-by of higher rank, forming a living choreography of submission. A checkpoint looms ahead, a sekisho. 2 guards flank the gate, wearing lighter armor and sharper expressions. The farmer whispers that travel between domains is highly restricted, especially for peasants. Every passerby must show travel papers stamped with their lord's seal. You smile nervously, having absolutely nothing resembling paperwork. Fortunately, looking lost and sweaty, reads universally as harmless. The guards wave you through with a grunt. Inside the lord's territory, the air even smells different, scented faintly of pine resin and formality. The road widens, flanked by stone lanterns and manicured bamboo rows. Soon, the tiled roofs of the daimyo's compound rise like a dragon's back above the tree line. The site is surprisingly architectural. Ornate gates, precise symmetry, every gravel path raked into immaculate waves. No wonder everyone bows when entering this space. Even the rocks behave. You remove your sandals, following the farmer's lead. The wooden planks inside gleam like still water. Low-spoken attendants glide by in muted robes. Their steps make no sound. And livelihoods, you're ushered to a waiting area where the smell of incense is so delicate you almost don't notice it. The olfactory equivalent of authority. While the farmer presents his portion of rice tribute, you're left kneeling behind him, which turns out to be a crash course in humility. You shift, your foot cramps, and immediately a nearby servant clears her throat softly, a reminder that fidgeting is, apparently, a crime. You freeze, half-bowed, halfway between reverence and spinal collapse. When the daimyo enters, the world seems to inhale. He doesn't wear elaborate armor, just silken robes the color of midnight, his hair arranged neatly in the high knot of rank. His face is unlined, unreadable, and calm in the way polished steel is calm. You realize people in power don't need noise. Their silence does the talking. The overseer reads down lists. Yields, taxes, temple offerings. His brush scratching rhythmically across a scroll. You don't understand the words, but you feel the pulse of hierarchy in them. The daimyo nonce, dismisses the crowd with the faintest motion of his hand, and glides away. Audience over. Life resumes its shape around him like water closing after a stone. As you shuffle out, your knees tingling with relief, an elderly clerk catches your eye and smiles faintly. First time, he murmurs. His tone is kind, almost amused. He doesn't speak often, power seldom does. You bow, uncertain what else to do, and the man returns to his endless ledgers, generations of numbers stacked beneath calligraphic grace. Outside, sunlight cuts through layers of smoke and perfume. The farmer seems lighter now, as though honoring the Lord unclogged some invisible artery of obligation. You ask him quietly what he thinks of the daimyo. Think, he says, surprised. We don't think about him, we think around him. That answer lodges itself in your head like a haiku of survival. You pass a garden on your way out, and for a moment, the whole world slows. Raked gravel flows like waves around sculpted rocks. Kawaii ripple circles beneath maple shadows. A gardener kneels nearby, gently brushing fallen leaves away from a stone path with a straw whisk. You stop, mesmerized by the quiet art of it. This serenity feels both genuine and performative, a beauty built on invisible fear. The gardener catches your stare and smiles. The daimyo likes order, he says softly. Even the wind must ask permission to move his leaves. You laugh under your breath, and livelihoods, but he's already turned back to his work. On the walk home, villagers whisper stories about the Lord. Some say he's a poet who can recite verses about the moon that make monks cry. Others insist he once executed a man for sneezing during an audience. Historians still argue whether such tales were propaganda or peasant folklore, but you learn quickly in feudal Japan, myth and memory share the same address. Along the roadside, you spot one of the daimyo's banners snapping in the wind. His family crest 3 hollyhock leaves in a circle. You'll see it again years later in textbooks, the emblem of the Tokugawa clan, rulers whose peace came packaged with suffocating control. But right now, it's just fabric fluttering over exhausted peasants trudging home under sacks of tribute. The farmer breaks your somber silence with a grin. Not so frightening, right? You shrug, still processing the tight choreography of bows and whispers. You didn't faint, he adds approvingly. That's something. As the evening bells toll in distant villages, you descend into the familiar rhythm of ordinary life. Smoke curling above rooftops, water ladled from the well, the drone of cicadas returning like a lullaby. You've seen power up close, and it looks a lot less human than you imagined. It's quiet, calculated, and perfumed. But beneath its stillness lies a pulse strong enough to make the whole valley kneel. When night falls, you sit outside the farmhouse, watching fireflies drift above the paddies like stray sparks from the god's lantern. For the first time, you understand the strange unity of this world. Everyone, from farmer to daimyo, keeps time to the same invisible drum. Some lead the rhythm, others sweat to it, but no one escapes the beat. You stretch out your sore legs, tracing a finger along your sleeve still flecked with dirt from the morning road. The mud of peasants, you think, and the perfume of lords, 2 halves of the same coin. You smile faintly, letting the night breeze carry away the tension. Maybe, you reason, surviving feudal Japan isn't about strength or honor after all. Maybe it's just about learning when to bow and when to breathe again. By the time morning fog curls around the rooftops again, you've almost convinced yourself the daimyo visit was a fever dream. The farmer, though, has a glint in his eye, part pride, part resignation. You've seen where power sleeps, he says, tossing a bundle of firewood onto your shoulder. Time you see how it protects itself. You wince under the weight. Apparently, you're heading into the castle grounds today, not as a guest this time, but as labor, an extra pair of hands borrowed to haul supplies from the nearby storehouse. The word, castle, conjures images of stone fortresses, turrets, maybe a moat full of armored drama. You soon learn that in Japan castles don't shout, They whisper authority through geometry. The path leads through gates taller than houses, framed by walls built from mountain boulders, locked together so perfectly you couldn't fit a blade between them. The moat gleams pale green, reflecting clouds and the lazy circling of Kauai. Wooden bridges curve gracefully over it, all elegance resting on military paranoia. This place is more fortress than fairy tale. Guards in half-armor stand at key points, staring down anyone who dares linger. One checks your bundle, nods, and waves you through. You follow the farmer past outer walls, through narrow corridors designed to feel like traps. Every turn loses your sense of direction. You suspect even the air here has been disciplined. Inside, servants move with silent precision. Some polish the wooden floors using long cloths tied to their waists, gliding like human mops. Others carry trays of rice cakes or rolls of silk, knowing better than to meet anyone's eyes. The castle hums with restrained motion, a living organism whose heart beats beneath layers of etiquette. You're brought to a side courtyard to stack firewood and jars of sake. Overhead, the white walls gleam in sunlight, and the curved tiled roofs look almost alive, rising like dragon scales against the sky. From beyond the next wall, you hear muted music, a shakuhachi flute drifting through the air like incense smoke. The farmer catches you listening. Entertainment hall, he explains. Lord's guests, or spies, depending on the week. His tone isn't bitter exactly, just cautious. You nod, imagining what sort of world exists inside that sound, that rarefied realm of poetry, politics, and poison. After chores, a young page in crisp, white robes approaches, holding a lacquer tray with small cups of tea. He bows slightly and offers one to each laborer. You accept carefully, the aroma sharp and grassy. His lordship's generosity, the boy says in a tone so rehearsed it could be theatre. The farmer mutters, "It's from leftovers. Drink before it cools." You do, and immediately burn your tongue. So much for refinement. By midday, you're sent to fetch bundles of reeds near the inner moat. And livelihoods, the sun burns white overhead, turning the water's surface into a mirror. You kneel to tie the reeds and notice carvings on the stones. Little notches and markings, old as the moat itself. The farmer bends beside you. "Builder's mark," he says. "They signed their work this way. No samurai ever asked their names, but the walls remember." That thought stays with you. How the traces of ordinary people survive hidden beneath the architecture of power. You hear footsteps, measured, slow. Turning, you catch sight of a senior retainer crossing the bridge, his robe embroidered with the family crest. Two attendants flank him, heads bowed. A gust of wind lifts the ends of his hakama, revealing gleaming sandals. When he passes, he casts one brief glance toward you. Curious, indifferent, maybe both, and moves on. His silence feels heavier than any shout. "Do they ever relax?" You whisper. "Only when drunk," the farmer mutters. "Even then, they apologize to their swords before sleeping." You stifle a laugh, earning an exasperated look. He's not wrong, though. A mainstream fact about this class flashes through your mind. Samurai were bound by strict behavioral codes, but beneath that formality simmered human flaws, political jealousy, romantic scandals, under-the-table alliances. Some historians even suggest that behind castle walls, the greatest battles weren't fought with blades but with gossip. You can almost picture it now. A daimyo's advisor using a tea ceremony to imply betrayal, or a rival lord slipping rumors between sips. The farmer might not know the details, but you sense he's lived his share of being collateral in aristocratic chess matches. A quirky detail breaks your train of thought. A servant passing by carries a small wooden cage, the kind used for birds. Inside, however, flutters not a bird but a cricket, singing furiously against the bars. The boy explains when asked that samurai sometimes kept crickets for luck, believing their conch chirp deterred evil spirits. Historians still argue whether that's folklore or emotional symbolism. A warrior's need to trap beauty in a life built around death. You watch the tiny creature tremble, chirping to an empire that doesn't listen. and you can't help sympathizing. Late afternoon brings shadows stretching long across the courtyard. The farmer finishes tying the last bundles and sighs. "We go," he says. But before you do, he leads you around a quiet corner of the inner wall. There stands a lone pine twisting upward from polished gravel, its roots anchored in a sunken stone basin. Beneath it rest offerings, sake cups, pressed blossoms, an old sword held half buried in moss. Shrine for the builder who fell. The farmer says, "He died when the wall collapsed. They say his ghost keeps the castle standing." You stare at the humble shrine. The contrast between grandeur and grief stark enough to sting. The wind moves through the pine needles with a soft hiss, almost like whispering. You bow instinctively. As you step back over the moat bridge, you glance once more at the castle rising behind you, bright in the sunset, serene and calculating. It's beautiful, yes, but the kind of beauty that demands obedience. Descending the path toward home, you feel a strange mix of awe and sadness. You've seen the center of this world, its perfection forged by fear, its grace paid in sweat. Beneath every smooth surface lies the memory of hands that built it, unseen but enduring. The farmer kicks a rock off the road, grinning faintly. "Still think you'd survive here?" He teases. You snort. "If I had to sweep those floors every day, I'd probably turn into a ghost just to escape." He laughs, and for a fleeting moment, the rigidity of feudal order cracks enough for human camaraderie to slip through. The sound of his laughter follows you down the hill as the castle walls fade into the dusk. A reminder that even in a land built on top-down control, the warmth of everyday humor still claims a tiny, rebellious victory. By now, the castle's rigid perfection feels like a dream you woke from twice. Days return to their normal texture, mud and sweat, sunlight and rice gruel, routine woven with the occasional weirdness of superstition. You discover quickly that religion here is less belief and more insurance. Everyone believes in something because, frankly, what if it works? The morning begins with a faint rhythm of temple bells rolling across the valley. Their deep tones reach the village before the light does. The farmer's wife sets a small offering near the household shrine. A few grains of rice, a whisper of incense, smoke curling into the rafters. She nods toward it, reminding you silently that everything has a spirit. House beams, well water, even stubborn travelers from another time. You kneel out of politeness, although you're not quite sure which way to bow. The tiny wooden altar holds a carved fox with chipped ears, a talisman of Inari, the Shinto god of rice and prosperity. The idea fits neatly with daily life here. If your crops fail, pray harder. You glance at the fox's painted eyes, and for a second, you swear it's watching back. Then again, sleep deprivation makes anything blink. The villagers bustle into their morning rhythm, but today they're headed somewhere different. Once a week, monks from the nearby Buddhist temple visit to bless the harvest, and more practically, to remind everyone that spiritual merit might someday balance what taxes cannot. You trail behind the crowd toward a ridge overlooking the village. The path cuts through cedar and camellia bushes heavy with dew. The air buzzes with insects and quiet anticipation. The temple announces itself before you see it. The steady clang of a bronze gong and the murmur of chanting. When you emerge from the trees, it's there. A cluster of wooden halls, full of shadows and incense haze. A few monks sweep fallen petals from the courtyard, their movements slow and peaceful. The smell, smoke, pine, and faint sweetness wraps around you like a spell. The head monk, shaved bald and smiling as if privy to a cosmic joke, greets the villagers with calm authority. Each bows, offering sacks of rice and bundles of herbs. You follow suit, bowing awkwardly but sincerely. He accepts with a nod, his eyes faintly amused at your clumsy imitation. He then speaks softly to the crowd about balance, the impermanence of all things, the wheel of existence turning ceaselessly. You don't catch every word, but the tone is soothing like rain hitting a roof. Life here doesn't rush, it ripples. A mainstream fact drifts. From memory, Japan's religious landscape in this era was an intricate braid of Shinto and Buddhism. People moved fluidly between them, praying at a shrine for a good harvest one day, then lighting incense for ancestors at a temple the next. Spiritual pluralism wasn't contradiction, it was survival, like owning two umbrellas just in case the sky can't make up its mind. After the ceremony, you wander near the side hall where carved guardian statues glare from the shadows. Between them, a smaller altar catches your eye. Dedicated to Jizzle, the gentle protector of travelers and lost children. Someone has draped a red bib around the statue's neck, and tiny pebbles pile at its feet, left by grieving parents or hopeful wanderers. The sight tightens your chest more than you expect. A villager whispers that when children die young, their spirits are said to linger, stacking stones to earn their passage into the afterlife. Parents leave small offerings to comfort them. The idea feels both heartbreaking and tender. You find yourself placing a smooth river stone beside the others, not because you truly believe, but because it feels wrong not to. Nearby, incense burns in a line of clay bowls. You try lighting one but choke spectacularly on the smoke. The farmer elbows you. "Careful," he says, grinning. "If you offend the spirits, they'll follow you home." You cough, tears streaming, and mutter, "Too late." He laughs quietly, the sound blending with the low hum of chanting drifting from the main hall. As the villagers disperse, a few women linger near the temple pond to offer prayers to Sujin, the water deity. They splash handfuls of cool water over their faces while murmuring blessings for rain at the right time and sun at the right strength. The eternal negotiation between heaven and weather. You watch how naturally their gestures flow, as if faith is muscle memory. A quirky discovery waits near the temple gating, a makeshift wooden box filled with folded paper slips. Omichi fortunes. You pick one at random. The characters dance beyond your literacy, so the farmer translates. Half blessing, he smirks. "Not good, not bad," says you should avoid arrogance and sharp objects. You nod solemnly, deciding that's exceptional advice for any century. Historians still argue when omakuji became common, but luck boxes like this hint that humans have always enjoyed outsourcing destiny to stationery. As you and the farmer descend the slope toward home, a light drizzle begins. Rain dots the straw hats, patters on leaves, turns the path to soft clay. "Inari's gift," the farmer says, satisfied. The landscape darkens into silver and green hues. Villagers hurry to cover their bundles, laughing despite soaked sleeves. Watching them weave through the mist, you realize religion here isn't abstract, it's tactile. Gods live in rice leaves, in roof beams, in the water cupped between your palms. By the time you return, the sky clears, leaving steam rising from the paddies. The farmer's wife greets you with dried fish and barley tea. She sets 2 bowls before the small fox shrine and bows deeply. Smoke curls upward. Somewhere outside, a frog croaks approval. That night, as you lie on the tami mat, the soft scent of incense lingers in the wood. Livelihoods, you think about how these people endure, not just through strength but through ritual. 1,000 tiny packs with unseen forces. Faith here isn't loud or argumentative. It's humble, transactional, patient. You close your eyes, listening to rain resume in distant rhythm. Maybe, you think, this belief sustains them more than rice ever could. Or maybe it's just another way to keep fear at bay. Either way, it works. By now, you've learned that peace in the village is like the calm surface of a pond. Serene until something skips across it. And today, gossip is that stone. You wake to the sound of murmurs outside, voices lowered, urgent, carrying that electric tone of, "We probably shouldn't be talking about this." Naturally, that makes you listen harder. The farmer greets you with a wry smile. "Market day," he says, tying a rope around a bundle of vegetables. People talk more than they buy. You glance toward the gathering crowd already moving down the road. Curiosity wins. The village looks different on market day. The usually subdued lanes transform into a mosaic of movement carts rumbling over worn earth, merchants shouting prices like poets trying to out-improvise one other, dogs weaving through legs in search of dropped morsels. You feel the energy vibrating off the air. Finally, something resembling chaos. Smoke curls from food stalls. Someone's frying rice cakes. The scent sweet and nutty. You trade a polite bow for a sample, nearly burning your mouth again. A woman behind the stall laughs, eyes bright beneath her linen headscarf. You eat like a soldier back from campaign, she teases. Careful before I charge samurai prices. As you wander, the farmer points out familiar faces, the pottery maker who knows every rumor before it's a rumor, the trader who allegedly measures profits by moon phases, and the quiet fisherman who somehow always returns with the biggest catch and never talks about how. You realize every village, no matter the century, runs on two currency-sing rice and gossip. One mainstream fact hums in your heading: in Tokugawa, Japan, social mobility was nearly impossible, but information, stories, jokes, whispered secrets flowed freely between classes. The shogunate tried to regulate speech through censorship, yet oral culture slipped through cracks like smoke. Even peasants knew more palace drama than most samurai would admit. You test this theory when an old man beckons you closer. He's squatting near a crate of dried persimmons, grinning the grin of someone about to spill tea centuries before it became a phrase. "You hear the news from the hills," he rasps. Bandits again. Some say they're farmers turned thieves. Others say runaway Ronin, you ask, pretending innocence. He nods sagely. Masterless samurai, dangerous men. Loyalty without a lord becomes hunger with a sword. His dramatic pause deserves applause. The farmer cuts in, unimpressed. Old story. They say that every year. Yet even he glances toward the road leaving the valley, as if checking the horizon for dust and trouble. The old man winks, selling you a dried persimmon anyway. You buy it. Not because you need fruit, because every good rumor deserves a tip. Later, the day folds into a wider rhythm. Merchants haggling like it's art, musicians twanging shamisen strings, children darting between stalls, faces sticky with sweets. You feel an odd happiness here, though underneath it hums a sense of tension. As if joy always has to check in with authority first. You stop near a tailor's booth where bolts of indigo cloth flutter in the breeze. The tailor explains the dyeing process, how the deep blue hue, izome, comes from fermented leaves of the indigo plant. Smells bad, looks beautiful, he says proudly. Then he adds, half whisper, "That's life here, isn't it?" You chuckle at the poetic fatalism. Beamed the cheerful colors, though another whisper circulates talk of rising rice taxes. A merchant punished for selling goods without a permit. A temple accused of hoarding silver coins. The chatter weaves through the stalls like invisible nettles. One fringe rumor catches your attention. A woman selling pottery hints that her cousin's neighbor's uncle saw foxfires. Small blue flames dancing across the paddies at night. Omens of unrest or rebellion. Historians still argue whether these kitsune lights were natural marsh gas or fear made visible. But tonight, imagination feels just as powerful as fact. As evening lowers, villagers gather near the well, sharing leftovers and laughter. Someone produces a shamisen and begins plucking playful notes, while a few children try to dance, their bare feet stirring dust into twilight. You lean against a post, content simply to exist inside the sound. Then, a sharp whistle cuts through the noise. A patrol of 2 minor samurai rounds the corner, surveying the crowd. Instantly, music halts, posture straightens, smiles fade. The authority these men carry seems disproportionate to their actual rank. Proof that fear, not steel, maintains peace. The taller one eyes a merchant's scales, accuses him of cheating taxes. The merchant bows repeatedly, his face pale. After a few tense moments, the samurai smirks and pockets a rice cake before strolling away. Small corruption, just part of the system's heartbeat. The farmer shakes his head. "They protect order," he murmurs. even if they break it first. When the patrol leaves, chatter resumes, but softer now. You realize how fragile freedom feels here, existing only in moments before footsteps echo. As the market disperses, lanterns flicker to life, their paper skins glowing amber. The farmer purchases pickled plums for his wife, and the potter gifts you a small cup, rough-edged but beautifully glazed. Souvenir, he insists, to remember noise by. You thank him, feeling strangely honored. On the walk home, the road glows faintly under fireflies. You chew the last of the dried persimmon, sticky sweetness lingering on your tongue. Around you, the darkness carries whispers, maybe of spirits, maybe of conspiracies, maybe just of people who've learned to talk softly to survive loudly structured lives. When you reach the farmhouse, the children are already asleep, the night thick with cricket song. The farmer sets down his bundles, sighs, and mutters. Same talk, every year. Bandits, ghosts, taxes, dreams. None of it ends. You glance toward the horizon where the hills fade into moonlight. Maybe he's right, but maybe within those endless stories, the whispered rebellions, the tiny resistances, something human keeps breathing. You slip the little cup onto the windowsill. It catches a glint of moonlight and turns it to silver. Fragile, handmade, perfectly imperfect, much like the people who fill this wary, whispering village. Morning creeps in soft and golden, slipping through the paper screen windows like liquid honey. You wake to the low drone of traders outside, voices carrying the rhythm of commerce stitched seamlessly into survival. Today, the farmer announces, you're going to the main town market. Not the village's chatty little affair, but the big one down the valley. A sprawling labyrinth of stalls, samurai checkpoints, and the occasional opportunity to get trampled by an ox cart. You pack nothing but curiosity and mild dread. The journey stretches over winding roads dotted with tea stands and travelers trudging under baskets. The air smells of boiling soybeans and wet wood, a scent that grows stronger as the road widens into organized kiosks. Before long, you stand at the town's edge, staring at a scene that vibrates with energy. Humanity compressed into streets barely wide enough for breath. The market feels alive. A living creature made of bargaining voices and dusty footsteps. Merchants shout proudly about their wares, lacquerware from Kyoto, woven straw sandals, dried squid strung like festive bunting. Someone waves roasted chestnuts under your nose while another tries to sell charms promising safe childbirth. You're tempted to buy both, though you need neither. The farmer pushes through the throng with practiced ease, ignoring the seductive sparkle of goods beyond his budget. Here, status is visible in the smallest details, silk sleeves brushing against rough hemp, hairpins announcing class more loudly than speech. You realize you could tell a person's social rank just by listening. Nobles glide, commoners stomp. One mainstream fact flickers through your mind go. By the 18th century, many of these markets had become hobbits of cultural exchange, even proto-urban life. Edo's modern Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka thrived as hubs of trade where merchants, technically the lowest class, quietly amassed enough wealth to rival samurai. Ironically, money here outranked sword, but only in whispers. Publicly, the hierarchy still stood untouched, like a painted statue no one dared chip. You pause to watch a merchant meticulously weigh coins on a small brass scale. Each oval-shaped koban gleams under the sun, its edges shaved thin by hands that probably lived and died counting coins. The merchant flicks his abacus with hypnotic rhythm. If the shogun taxed math, you mutter, this man would be bankrupt. The farmer snorts mild approval. You drift toward a stall selling amulets carved from bone. The merchant, an old woman with sharp eyes and a grin missing several teeth, leans forward. Traveler, she asks softly. You look halfway between this world and another. Her words freeze you briefly, too accurate by half. She chuckles. Buy one charm. It guards against getting lost. You buy it because superstition feels cheaper than regret. As you move on, you're pulled toward a crowd gathered around a storyteller. He stands on a tiny platform, waving a paper fan for emphasis. His voice cuts easily through the market's roar, reciting a tale of a clever merchant who tricked a greedy lord during a tea exchange. Every punchline hits like thunder, every pause baited with expectation. The crowd erupts in laughter and nodding approval. You can almost see the spark of subtle rebellion here, wit replacing swordplay. When the story ends, coins clink into his wooden box. You throw in one yourself, partly as payment, partly as thanks for proving humor survives our centuries. The storyteller bows deeply. Even samurai, he mutters to you with a wink, need peasants to laugh at them. Quietly. Next, the farmer leads you toward the rice exchange district, the market's economic heart, and livelihoods, and the place where peasants hand over the soul of their work grain. A warehouse the size of a temple looms ahead, its doors wide open to reveal piles of clean white rice glowing faintly in the sunlight. Men with brushes and ledgers move like priests cataloging prayers. Every sack weighs precisely, every grain accounted for. While you watch, a small argument breaks out between two officials. The clerk insists one supplier's rice is underweight. The supplier's, the scales off. Voices rise, and within minutes, a minor samurai stomps over, hand resting on his sword. The argument dissolves instantly, grievances evaporating in the heat of power. The samurai nods, restores, order, and moves on. You feel the collective exhale of everyone near. Historians still argue whether these small interventions kept peace or simply froze injustice in place. But right now, you're too impressed by how efficiently fear settles disputes. By midday, the air thickens with scent and smoke. Vendors grill skewers of eel glazed in soy sauce, their sizzling sound mingling with the rhythmic chants of sellers hawking rice wine. You buy one cup, half curiosity, half hydration, and it hits both sweet and sharp. Like history served warm, you're starting to understand that here, indulgence isn't rebellion, it's relief. You wander into a side alley where artisans display their crafts. A man carving netsuke, those tiny toggle sculptures for fastening pouches, beckons you closer. His fingers move with impossible delicacy, coaxing a mouse from ivory with a few precise cuts. Every man leaves something small behind. He murmurs as wood dust drifts like fog. You nod, humbled by the poetry that hides inside commerce. A few stalls down, two merchants argue over the worth of counterfeit silver. You catch snippets. Foreign traders, Dutch port, Nagasaki deals. The farmer leans close. Don't repeat, he warns quietly. They trade news like rice. Sometimes poison, sometimes profit. The afternoon sun leans west, casting long shadows over the market's cluttered beauty. The noise wanes slowly, replaced by the rhythmic thud of wooden shutters closing. Merchants pack their wares in silence, their fortunes folded up for another day. The farmer buys last-minute miso paste, and you barter for a tiny bell decorated with painted waves. Something about its faint chime feels like a preserved piece of noise. The road home glows amber. Behind you, smoke from cooking fires curls over the town like incense from a massive altar to daily life. You walk quietly beside the farmer, listening to your own sandals scrape against the dirt. Both of you are too tired for more words. Halfway back, fireflies rise from the ditches, blinking like tiny lanterns in the growing dark. You tilt your head up to see the stars beginning their slow bloom. Somewhere between the hum of trade and the silence of the fields, you realize something simple. Even in a world stacked with rules, people always find ways to barter joy. When you reach the hilltop, the farmer sighs. Good market? He decides. You nod, smiling faintly. Good stories. You reply. He chuckles. Same thing, isn't it? Maybe it is. You glance back one last time at the distant torches of the fading town, the glow of ambition, chaos, and humanity flickering under the long peace of the shogun. Then you turn toward the darkened farmhouse waiting below, where silence, for once, feels earned. It's strange how quickly feudal time wraps you up. You stop stringing days together, they just flow like irrigation water, looping endlessly from sunrise to sunset. But today feels different. There's laughter outside, mixed with the delicate jingle of shamisen strings and the smell of incense burning sweeter than usual. The farmer's wife beams as she folds cloth. Wedding, she says, and feast. The word instantly brightens the air. After weeks of sweat and silence, joy feels almost illegal. You follow the villagers toward the square, where a makeshift canopy of paper ribbons flutters between bamboo poles. Beneath it, two young villagers kneel side by side, hands folded neatly as the priest hums a low rhythmic chant. You sit cross-legged in the crowd, realizing this isn't just matrimony. It's contract, survival plan, and social glue bound into one ceremony. The couple bows to each other. No kissing, no declarations, just the quiet exchange of sake between lacquered cups. The gesture is simple but heavy. We share the same cup, therefore we share the same fate. You watch the crowd bow in unison. Respect layered like origami. The priest claps twice to summon blessings, and a gust seems to answer, scattering cherry petals that weren't there seconds ago. A mainstream fact threads through your mind. Arranged marriages dominated this era, dictated by family need rather than romance. Love, if it existed, often came later, or not at all. But everyone played the part, because stability mattered more than feeling. It's grimly practical, maybe even wise, though your modern heart aches a bit watching strangers vow forever before they've shared a single argument about laundry. The farmer leans toward you. Her family owes grain, his family lacks workers. Now they're even. That's how love begins here. You nod, half embarrassed at how pragmatic it sounds. Once the ceremony ends, the mood shifts instantly. Solemnity dissolves into laughter and chatter. Bowls of rice wine appear. Trays of pickles and dried fish pass between hands, and a few brave souls start singing. It's like the entire village exhales at once. You're handed a steaming cup of sake by the bride's grandmother, who grins mischievously. For luck, she says. It burns all the way down, hot enough to make your ears ring. Soon the shamisen joins in, plucked by a merchant's wife with hidden talent. A rhythmic drum follows. The hollow pulse of celebration. Children chase one another through drifting lantern smoke, while elders trade knowing smiles. The farmer joins a circle of men debating crop yields, but somehow turns it into jokes about weather demons mismanaging the rain. It hits you thing, laughter here is rebellion. Under taxes, duty, and rigid obedience, this sound is their revolution, soft but unstoppable. You catch sight of the newlights sharing an awkward smile as they're coaxed into dancing. Their hands barely touch, but eyes linger. Maybe love does bloom between duty's cracks. Later, when most have eaten themselves into happy silence, an old woman begins reciting a folktale. Her voice rises above the crickets, a story of a fox spirit who once fell in love with a human farmer, only to vanish when he discovered her true form. The ending drips with melancholy. Lesson, she declares, never chase what belongs to the gods, or they'll chase you back. The farmer nudges you, whispering, every story is a warning disguised as poetry. You nod because he's right. This world thrives on lessons nested inside myths. Historians still argue whether these stories carried social messages, keeping peasants obedient or reminding them of invisible consequences. But right now, sitting here amid sake fumes and starlight, the tale feels timeless. Every culture, every age, teaches through ghosts and heartbreak. As the moon rises fully, music turns slower, conversation softer. A few men fall asleep upright. Children wrap themselves in their mothers' sleeves. The bride and groom kneel once more before their families, bow deeply, and vanish toward their new home. A hut barely large enough for two hopes and a mat. The crowd cheers softly, less for romance than for endurance. The farmer sighs happily, pushing his empty sake cup toward you. Good day, he says simply. You nod, glancing at the fading lanterns swaying like captured stars. Somewhere behind the laughter, though, you catch the faint echo of another sound. The quiet crickets, the distant temple bell, and the soft hum of continuity. Life, moving forward as it always has. You can't help thinking about the unspoken side of this happiness, the arranged obedience, the expectation that duty lasts longer than affection. Tomorrow, the bride will rise before dawn like the rest, fetching water, folding dreams between laundry and harvest. Yet tonight, under paper lantern light, she's a queen in her own brief kingdom of applause. As people wander home, the farmer points at a bamboo pole decorated with folded paper charms fluttering in the breeze. Prayer flags, he says, for children, for long harvests, for peace. You add quietly, and maybe for love if there's room. He chuckles. If the gods are listening. Back at the farmhouse, the last of the lantern glow flickers through the distant trees. You crawl beneath your blanket, head still buzzing with sake warmth and music fragments. For the first time since you arrived in this strange century, you feel oddly human again. Not a visitor or survivor, just part of something small but infinite. As you drift off, you whisper the bride's vow to yourself. We share the same cup. Maybe that's what life here truly is. Drinking from the same fragile vessel, sometimes bitter, sometimes sweet, always together. The morning after the wedding unfolds like the slow exhale of a drumbeat. The air still smells faintly of smoke and spilled sake, but the village is already back to ordinary rhythm, sweeping, hauling, bowing. Celebration never lasts long here, not because people don't feel joy, but because joy, like rice, spoils if you leave it sitting too long. The farmer's wife has already handed you a bundle of laundry and a wooden paddle for the wash basin. Closed day, she announces. You blink at the pile. There are half a dozen work robes, each soaked in sweat and mud from days spent in the fields. She hands you a bar of lye soap that could double as a weapon and gestures toward the stream. You carry the bundle downhill until the stream reveals itself between reeds, winding silver through mossy stones. Kneeling on a smooth rock, you dunk the first robe and splash icy water across your arms. The chill hits like a slap, but the rhythm soon takes over in dip, scrub, twist, wring. It's hard work. But there's something grounding about it too. You watch the water ripple, carrying foam away like erasing fatigue from the fabric of the day. A girl about 12 appears beside you humming. She wears a faded blue kimono patched in 3 places and dips her own laundry beside yours. You scrub funny, she says innocently. You laugh. Where I come from, we use machines. She squints. What kind of spirit is that? Fair question. Halfway through the task, the farmer's wife joins you, laying freshly dried robes on a bamboo rack. She tells you about the little cues hidden in their clothing. Invisible codes signaling social rank, occupation, and even mood. Peasants wear hempen cotton, she says, shaking a robe. Samurai wear silk, but fine cloth can be dangerous. People start wondering if you earn too much or pray too little. Her words remind you of a mainstream factor. Sumptuary laws were strictly enforced under the Togawa shogunate. Clothing was basically moral handwriting. Too much luxury, and you risked both gossip and punishment. Status had to look proper even when it chafed. In this world, class wasn't only lived, it was worn. To illustrate, she pulls out one of her nicer kimonos folded in a chest. Indigo, with a faint crane pattern along the hem. Wedding robe, she says quietly. Wore once, after that, only at funerals. She runs her hand over the silk before closing the lid, sealing nostalgia inside. As she leaves, you notice a few villagers nearby spinning thread. Their wooden wheels turn lazily, producing that rhythmic squeak that somehow sounds older than language. One woman's bundle of dyed thread gleams like captured sunsets, saffron, aubergine, and faded jade. You wonder where such color fits in a world that prefers modesty. Later, back at the farmhouse, you try on one of the work robes you've washed. The rough hemp scratches your shoulders, the obi sash tying tight around your middle. You glance in the polished bronze mirror on the shelf. A warped reflection turns you into some hybrid of peasant and ghost. The farmer's wife laughs. "Sleeves backward," she says. "You're dressed for the grave, you quickly fix it," mumbling thanks. Humor here always hovers between practical and morbid truth. As you hang the last robe to dry, you overhear nearby women gossiping about accessories. Wooden combs that supposedly attract good fortune, sashes dyed with special herbs to ward off illness, even tiny sachets worn inside sleeves filled with dried chrysanthemum petals. You imagine your modern self trying to explain lucky socks, and suspect the conversation wouldn't sound so different. A quirky story circular SL. One villager swears the local samurai powders her face with crushed pearls mixed with nightingale droppings, said to bring a porcelain glow. Historians still argue whether that beauty ritual was elegant vanity or early skincare gone unhinged. Either way, it proves eternal truth. Fashion has always demanded weird sacrifices. By midday, the robes flutter dry in the steady breeze. You stack them neatly into baskets with a satisfaction that feels disproportionate to the task. The farmer's wife nods. "You learn quickly," she says. "Soon we find you a nice family to marry into." You nearly choke. "Please don't." She just laughs and waves you off. You ask her how long these garments last before wear tears them apart. She shrugs. "We mend, always mend." She pulls a needle from her sleeve and threads it effortlessly. "Rich men buy new. We patch and remember." That small phrase, patch and remember, lodges deep inside your chest. Evening brings a glow to the fields. The freshly washed robes line the fence like a banner of soft colors under orange sky. Each sway catches sunlight, shimmering imperfectly, a quiet victory against decay. After dinner, the family sits around the fire, the children wearing clean robes that smell faintly of soap and river water. The father works on repairing his straw sandals. The mother patches a sleeve. The rhythmic snip of scissors and the hiss of straw twisting fill the room like a shared heartbeat. The farmer sees you watching. "Clothes mean work," he says, "but they also mean pride. No matter how poor, you don't let them rot." Then he smirks slightly. "Except for me on rest days." You grin. That hint of sarcasm feels timeless. Outside, the moon spills pale light on the drying racks. The garments dance in the breeze as if bowing to unseen ancestors. You step out for air, the cool scent of hemp and river rising together. Oddly soothing, oddly pure. For a moment, you imagine your own clothes from the world you left, like fabrics stitched by machines easily replaced. Here, every fiber carries fingerprints, stories, seasons. Laundry isn't just cleaning, it's renewal. A conversation between people and their world, repeated until the cloth gives out or the hands do. You smile to yourself, whispering the farmer's wife's mantra, "Patch and remember." Maybe, in some forgotten closet of history, your presence will cling like a repaired thread, small, invisible, but stubbornly holding. The next morning drifts in soft and slow, dripping from the eaves like honeyed rain. You almost get used to waking with birds instead of alarms, though your body still aches from washing every robe in the valley. But the day has other plans, murmured ones. The farmer mentions that someone important in the neighboring village is hosting a tea gathering, not a drunk festival or local feast this time, he clarifies, but a real tea ceremony, quiet, sacred, and nerve-wrackingly formal. "Why me?" you ask. He shrugs. "They always need extra hands to sweep, serve, or just fill space politely." So off you go, half servant, half witness to one of history's most delicate power performances, the Japanese tea ceremony, or chanoyu. The house sits at the garden's edge, barely visible through pines and bamboo. A narrow path covered in moss leads to a wooden gate that hums with understatement. Inside, everything feels suspended, as if the world has taken a deep breath and refuses to exhale. You help carry baskets of charcoal and kneel by a small bamboo fountain whose trickle becomes the heartbeat of the space. Guests arrive in silence, their paper sandals brushing the ground like whispers. The host, an aging samurai with kindly eyes but posture sharp enough to slice, greets each visitor with a bow. He wears simple grey robes, unadorned except for a white cord at the waist, wealth hidden behind humility. That's the power move of this century. They file into a small tatami room where the air itself seems to stand still. The host's movements are poetry slowed to ceremony. He wipes the rim of each bowl with a silk cloth folded precisely, scoops green powder with deliberate grace, pours hot water until the steam carries its own choreography. You kneel at the edge, pretending invisibility, but every shift of posture feels like a crime. The faint click of bamboo whisk against porcelain becomes mesmerizing, a tiny storm inside calmness. The guests bow, sip, wipe the rim, bow again. No one speaks more than necessary. Words here would sound like clutter. A mainstream fact runs through your mind. This disciplined quiet was born centuries earlier from Zen practice. The idea wasn't just drinking tea, it was shaping time into an art form, transforming something ordinary into meditation, beauty through simplicity, reverence through routine. Halfway through, the host gestures for you to refill the fire brazier. You approach, holding your breath as you add fresh charcoal. The sound, a soft hiss of burning resin, might as well be thunder here. The samurai's eyes shift toward you, briefing approval, perhaps, or mild curiosity at the intruder from nowhere. Either way, you survive. When the fresh bowl of tea is served to a younger soldier, he accepts it reverently, though you notice his hands tremble slightly. First ceremony, whispers the farmer beside you. He fears spilling more than dying. You stifle a chuckle. The samurai takes one careful sip, lets the bitterness roll across his tongue, and exhales as if tasting enlightenment itself. The others nod faintly, a shared appreciation that feels coded. Only later do you realize that the tea room isn't only spiritual, it's political theater. Rank dissolves here formally, but everyone still performs hierarchy in subtler ways. Who sits nearest the host, who pours, who speaks second. Stillness, it seems, can carry as much meaning as battle. During a pause, you're asked to bring more water from the garden's spring. Outside, the breeze carries the perfume of charcoal smoke and early blossoms. You pause at the small pond near the bamboo fence. A few goldfish flicker beneath the surface like living ornaments. As you fill the kettle, a monk passing by gives you a nod. Remember, he says, a bowl of tea holds the universe if your hands stop shaking long enough to notice it. You grin, half enlightened, half exhausted. Back inside, the final act unfolds. Sweets of red bean paste serve to counter the bitterness of matcha. Their glaze catches the low light like jewels, gone in 2 bites. The host bows deeply, murmurs thanks, and the ceremony ends. Guests step outside one by one, leaving a hush so complete it rings in your ears. The farmer stretches his legs, sighing. All that sitting, he mutters. I'd rather wrestle a plough. Yet even he looks calm and somehow, as though serenity has soaked in by accident. As you help clear the tea bowls, you notice faint hairline cracks on one cup. Instead of discarding it, the host examines it fondly. Later, he explains softly, it is more beautiful this way, a flaw that knows it's been forgiven. You recognize this as kintsugi, the art of mending broken pottery with lacquer mixed with gold, turning fracture into decoration. Historians still argue whether this practice emerged from aesthetic philosophy or accident, but everyone agrees it became the perfect metaphor for Japanese resilience, beauty, not despite imperfection, but because of it. The host sets the golden scared cup back on its shelf like a relic. For some reason, you can't look away. Maybe because you feel faintly the same, patched together by time travel, exhaustion, and stray awe. When everyone leaves, twilight filters through the shoji screens, painting the tatami in stripes of amber and violet. The farmer thanks the host, and you follow suit with a bow that might actually be acceptable this time. The host chuckles. Your spirit's loud, he says. Tea quiets it. Come again when you're half asleep. It will suit you better. Outside, cicadas drone in soft waves, and the air smells faintly of bamboo sap and burnt ash. The walk home feels slower than usual. You carry leftover warmth in your chest, the kind that doesn't fade quickly. For the first time in weeks, you don't long for comfort or distraction. You long for stillness. Maybe that's what the ceremony accomplished, training the mind to sit still long enough to see the poetry hiding in ordinary breath. When you reach the farmhouse, the farmer's wife greets you with surprise. You look peaceful, she says, or maybe dizzy. Both, you answer with a sleepy smile. You pour yourself a bowl of tea, thicker, rougher, nothing ceremonial about it. Yet somehow you sip it slower this time, listening to the faint whistle of the kettle and the steady night beyond. If the universe fits in a bowl, you think then this one's chipped, uneven, but still holding together, and that, somehow, feels enough. The morning after the tea ceremony smells of damp earth and iron. Rain must have crept through the valley during the night, leaving puddles glinting under thick clouds. The world feels quieter, even the roosters sound half-hearted. You step outside expecting to fetch water, but the farmer waves you toward the village square instead. Artisan's Day, he says. No fields, only hands. You blink, you mean a festival. He smirks. No, work. The square hums with industry. Blacksmiths, carpenters, papermakers, and weavers have gathered under tarps stretched between poles, each workspace its own universe of rhythm and precision. Smoke pours from furnaces, hammers ring in clean, steady tempo. The smell of molten metal and wet wood perfumes the drizzle. You hover near the blacksmith's forge first, hypnotized by the dance of sparks. The blacksmith himself is a mountain of a man, his arms coated in soot, his expression unreadable beneath streaks of sweat. He greets the farmer with a nod and eyes you with suspicion. Outsiders don't usually wander into heat and hammer. You bow anyway. He grunts approval before placing a glowing rod on the anvil. The sound when his hammer strikes is music in muscle form, the kind of rhythm that carries both exhaustion and pride. You learn a mainstream fact watching him. Japan's renowned steelwork, especially in sword making, wasn't only a martial art. During long stretches of enforced peace under the Togawa rule, many smiths shifted to crafting tools, nails, and even intricate hairpins. Skills simply changed shape. The precision remained sacred. The smith confirms it with a shrug. Steel doesn't care if it becomes blade or plow. Only hands decide meaning. At the next stall, a potter spins a wheel by foot, shaping damp clay into rounded bowls. His motions feel like breathing, continuous, balanced. When he pauses to trim excess clay, the air smells faintly of riverbed and smoke. He gestures for you to try. You hesitate, then place your palms around the rotating form. It wobbles, leans, and collapses spectacularly. The potter howls in laughter. Ah? The foreign ghost makes abstract art. The farmer chuckles beside you. You try again, slower this time, and actually coax something vaguely bowl-like from the spinning lump. Keep it, the potter says kindly, a reminder that patience takes years, accidents take seconds. Nearby, women hang sheets of freshly made paper, washi, on wooden poles to dry. The fibers shimmer like thin frost under grey light. One explains that paper making here involves soaking mulberry bark for days, pounding it into pulp, then blending and filtering it through bamboo screens. The process smells faintly sweet, like sap and effort. Our paper lasts longer than we do, she adds with quiet pride. You trail your fingers along a drying sheet and feel its texture. Strong, almost alive. The rain fades to mist by midday, and the square becomes a classroom of collaboration. Some villagers repair baskets, others carve toys or lacquer bowls. A sweet, resinous aroma floats through the air, lacquer mixed with smoke, curing into the glossy finish beloved across Japan. The farmer leans close. Days like this hold the village together, he says. Each trade feeds another. No one survives alone. He's right. The symmetry between roles is striking. The potter supplies dishes for cooks, the blacksmith forges sickles for farmers, the weaver spins cloth for everyone. Prosperity isn't competition, it's communal survival disguised as craftsmanship. You notice an older man sitting by himself under an awning, painting delicate patterns on a fan. The designs swirl like wind itself, gold lines looping through deep blue brushstrokes, and livelihoods for the daimyo's keeper. The painter murmurs when he spots your interest. An ocean pattern. He likes to pretend we have waves here. His voice holds both humor and resignation. He glances at you. Once, color was rebellion. Now, it's decoration. The thought lingers, that even artistry must bow to order. Later, the drizzle ends. Villagers gather their finished pieces and set them on display tables as if presenting gifts to the gods. Children dart between stalls, laughing, while adults whisper critique softened by smiles. The blacksmith's apprentices boast about nails that won't bend even if heaven tilts. The potter claims his cracked bowl holds air perfectly. Everyone's a little proud, a little playful. Then a small commotion stirs near the paper makers. A girl holds up a torn sheet, an accidental rip that ruined hours of work. Her lip trembles. Before she can cry, an old woman gently overlaps the edges, brushing them together with sticky rice paste. Paper forgives, she says, softly. You just have to speak to it gently. The crowd nods. You feel an echo of the tea master's kintsugi lesson. Beauty reborn through fracture. A quirky fact surfaces: some artisans secretly signed their works with palms, invisible under layers of glaze or lacquer. Tiny acts of rebellion to leave identity inside obedience. Historians still argue how widespread the practice was, but the idea that hidden voices survive through art feels almost magical. You start imagining faint verses sleeping beneath teacups and roof tiles. When the sun finally drops, the square glows golden from firelight reflected in wet ground. Finished wares glitter softly, metal catching fires gleam, clay bowls warm as sunset. The mood shifts from concentration to quiet celebration. The blacksmith pours sake into tiny cups and raises one high, to work that outlives the worker. He calls and everyone cheers. You sip your cup, still tasting smoke and ash, and realize you've witnessed something profound without realizing it. This is resistance too, creation as defiance against impermanence. The farmer leans on his knees, watching the flames flicker across the anvil. Art keeps hands from rusting, he murmurs, and hearts maybe. You nod slowly. Around you, laughter softens into murmur. Fires dim, the valley exhales in rhythm with the coals. You pick up the uneven clay bowl you made earlier, still cool against your palms, its shape imperfect yet stubbornly intact. Walking home through the quiet dark, you think about all the hands shaping this world, building, patching, painting, forgiving. The rain starts again, tapping on rooftops like distant applause, blessing both the art that endures and the people who created it simply to say, "We were here." By now, the rhythm of the village has sunk into your bones. Morning smoke, evening crickets, and everything in between stitched neatly together like an old kimono. But tonight, something feels different. Lanterns flicker along the street, the sound of drums approaches from the valley road, and people are smiling for no practical reason. The farmer grins at your confusion. Not all art is work, he says. Sometimes we let the fools perform. You follow him into the heart of the village, where a small temporary stage has been built from planks and straw mats. Children swarm around it, giggling. The air buzzes with fried food smoke and laughter, an intoxicating mix of soy glaze, roasted fish, and freedom. Someone presses a steamed bun into your hand before you even know to ask. It's festival night, and the stars themselves seem relieved. Two men appear on stage, both wearing painted wooden masks, one red with a huge nose, the other with cheeks puffed and eyes like tears frozen mid-blink. They begin a comic argument in exaggerated tones, tossing insults so absurd the crowd bursts into laughter. You recognize the rhythm instantly. This must be Kai Gen, the comedic counterpart to solemn no theater. Their act centers around a lazy servant pretending to be a wise monk. Every time he tries to sound profound, the Lord character catches him stealing rice wine. By the third repetition, the audience shouts the punchlines along with the actors. There's something liberating about this. Humor as safe rebellion. A mainstream fact hums in your memory in Tokugawa times. Kia Gen was allowed because it masqueraded as harmless fun, even while poking fun at authority. The laughter here has centuries of practice. How to laugh just enough to stay unnoticed by power. You join in, and it feels more human than anything you've done so far. Next, the tone shifts. A flute pierces the air, high and trembling. A chorus of steady chanting follows, and masked dancers glide in, slow at first, then hypnotic. Their robes shimmer under torchlight, each fold catching movement like waves. You're witnessing now, the most minimalist theater ever invented, where emotion hides between breaths and tragedy speaks through silence. One performer's mask is carved into serene beauty. She moves like drifting smoke. The story, whispered by a nearby villager, tells of a ghost returning to meet her lover, doomed to repeat sorrow each spring. You feel the chill before the rain even starts. Behind you, someone murmurs, "The gods watch when we remember sadness properly." You don't entirely understand, but you sense the truth in it. An idea that grief, performed beautifully, becomes a kind of purification. A fringe historical note slips into thought. Some scholars claim the earliest no plays evolved from shamanic rituals, where acting wasn't pretense but communion. The line between art and faith blurred until even ghosts were invited as honored guests. Whether that's fact or just putic imagination, the hair on your arms reacts as though the stage might actually breathe. After the somber grace of no, the night abruptly throws you into puppet chaos. Several men in black hoods emerge, carrying wooden figures large as children. The puppets move with uncanny grace, tilting their heads, folding fans, stomping tiny samurai feet. The narrator nearby chants in melodic thundering, "This is Bunraku, puppet theater for the people." The story, you're told, is about forbidden lovers forced to choose between duty and desire. When the puppets finally die in embrace, the crowd sighs audibly. Even puppets can break human hearts. Beside you, the farmer mutters approvingly, "They die beautifully. No real person could afford that much drama." He's not wrong. Tragedy is safer on stage than in life. The puppet master bows, and laughter returns with a more bawdy skit involving drunken monks, fluttering fans, and one unfortunate rooster puppet that keeps falling over. The children laugh so hard they nearly choke on their sweets. You find yourself cackling, tears streaming, your ribs aching. For once, the heaviness inside you, centuries of mud, rice, silent, dissolves in joy so silly it feels sacred. When the laughter dies, the torches dim to a soft amber glow. Musicians begin a slower rhythm. 2 drums, 1 flute, an occasional clack of wooden blocks. A dancer in a white mask enters, this time barefooted, spinning slowly with a handbell that catches light. The air hushes again. You realize you've sat through a full cycle of emotions: comedy, tragedy, love, laughter, remembrance, and calm, all in one night. Feudal Japan, it seems, compresses life into art because life itself rarely allows such freedom. Later, you help the villagers pack up the stage. The farmer carries planks on his shoulder, humming one of the play's silly tunes. A group of performers sit nearby, drinking sake straight from a wooden cask, their masks hanging around their necks like sleeping faces. You join them hesitantly, accepting a bowl passed your way. One older actor leans toward you. It's strange, isn't it? The shogun fears samurai rebellion, yet art. He taps his mask's forehead, creates more unrest than swords ever could. You tilt your head. You're saying theater changes people? He grins crookedly. No, I'm saying it reminds them they're still people. You'll think about that long after he stumbles off, singing off key. Walking home through the moon-wet path, your ears still ring with drums and laughter. The world feels expanded now. like the borders of silence stretched just enough to make room for joy. Performance here doesn't just entertain, it releases pressure, the same way laughter sneaks through cracks in rigid walls. At the farmhouse, the glow from the hearth spills out onto the path. You slip inside, where the family's already asleep, the soft snore of children mingling with crickets. You set down your sandals, stretch, and smile into the darkness. For once, you don't feel out of place or out of time. You feel part of an audience that has existed for centuries, one that laughs in the face of power, weeps at beauty, and claps politely for ghosts. Outside, a faint drumbeat echoes down the valley, fading slowly until only the night remains. The laughter and music from the festival still echo faintly in your dreams by the time dawn filters through the rice paper window. But instead of reverie, the new morning brings a hollow hush. The river outside hums low and impatient, swollen from days of scattered rain. The farmer's wife eyes the sky, frowning. The clouds look too thick, too heavy, as if the heavens themselves forgot moderation. She mutters, "Bad season starting early." And just like that, you realize you're about to meet a new opponent. Not samurai, not taxes, but weather. The whispering tyrant that rules everyone here. By mid-morning, the first raindrops fall slow and fat, darkening the dry dirt paths like spilled ink. You help cover the wood stacks with straw mats, but the air already tastes metallic with storm. The farmer knots his scarf tighter. "Monsoon," he says. The word sounds like both curse and prayer. For the first hour, the downpour feels almost pleasant, rhythmic, refreshing. Then it turns relentless. Water gushes off the eaves in curtains, pooling in door frames and creeping under sliding doors. You grab buckets, sloshing like a one-person flood rescue. The farmer shouts over the roar, "Ah! Don't fight it! Guide it!" It takes you a beat to realize he means redirecting the flow through small channels carved into the earth, makeshift trenches leading water away from the walls. The whole family joins in, barefoot and laughing miserably. Even soaked to the bone, there's strange coordination to it, as if thousands of years of wet seasons have trained their bodies to move like irrigation itself. A mainstream historical fact slips into your mind as you work. Japan's agrarian infrastructure during the Edo period was almost entirely dependent on monsoon cycles. Farmers prayed equally for rain and mercy. Too little, the crops died. Too much, and so did villages. Nature didn't care about titles. Not daimyo, not peasant, not foreign time traveler with circulation problems. By late afternoon, the storm settles into a kind of rhythm, still dangerous but steady, as if the sky ran out of temper and decided to sulk instead. The fields have become mirrors reflecting bruised clouds. Frogs sing wildly, drunk on the weather. Inside, everyone wrings out clothes, scrubs mud from doorstep corners, and pretends this is all perfectly normal. And it is normal, until thunder strikes close enough to rattle bowls on the shelf. The farmer's wife crosses herself in an oddly blended Buddhist Shinto gesture, whispering to Reijin, god of storms. She tosses a pinch of salt toward the door for protection. The children mimic her, grinning, their fear disguised as ritual. You think of how in your world, people hoard batteries and curse the forecast. Here they build relationships with lightning. Evening arrives early beneath the cloud blanket. The fire pit glows faintly in the gloom as dinner steams. Nothing fancy, just rice and pickled greens, but the warmth feels ceremonial. The farmer sits near the window, staring out into the grey blur where field meets sky. "We live by seasons," he says finally, voice low. "Take one wrong, the next one eats you." He's not exaggerating. He tells stories of years when heavy rains wiped out half the village's harvest, forcing peasants to sell children into servant contracts just to survive. Some neighbors fled inland, chasing rumors of better land. Others simply didn't wake after winter. A chill creeps up your spine. Feudal Japan's calm surface hides endless tragedy. Quiet, practical suffering rarely recorded because everyone who endured it had no time to write it down. Then he laughs softly, looking at you. You worry too much. The gods always grow tired before we do. It's both comforting and terrifying faith. During a lull in the rain, you step outside. The night smells of wet rice stalks and ozone. Tiny rivulets snake through the paths like nervous thoughts. Fireflies blink in the mist, dimmer now but determined. The entire valley glints faintly. Not shining exactly, but breathing. You spot the farmer's wife by the shrine behind the house, lighting a small lantern to leave before a wooden fox idol. You approach quietly, not wanting to disturb whatever conversation she's having with spirits. When she notices you, she smiles faintly. We thank the storm for showing mercy while it still can. Her words remind you of a quirky custom you once read about. Villagers believed naming a storm's anger, speaking to it directly, could calm it. Historians still argue whether that was ritual psychology or early meteorology, but you can feel sincerity in her voice. The rain drips steadily on her shoulders, yet she doesn't flinch. You bow beside her, not because you believe, but because belief feels infectious here, like warmth shared through wet clothes. By midnight, the flood has reached its peak. Water laps inches below the porch, reflecting flashes of lightning. The entire family sleeps lightly, half listening, half praying. You lie awake on your mat, tracking the creaks in the wood, the groan of rain on the roof. Then, for the first time all day, the thunder stops. The silence is so sudden it hums in your ears. Crickets venture tentative chirps. A bamboo frog croaks solo, proud and defiant. The storm, like an overworked warlord, has finally withdrawn. You roll onto your side, watching shadows ripple across the paper screens. Every storm ends. That's universal truth one. Universal truth twog, it always returns. The farmer turns over and mutters in his sleep. Tomorrow, we start again. And you know he's right. The fields will dry, the crops will need replanting, and life will kneel to weather's will again. It's exhausting, cyclical, and endlessly human. You close your eyes to the fading drip of rain from the eaves. For the first time since arriving in this century, you understand the patience carved into every face here, the serenity forged by repetition. In a land that lives at nature's mercy, peace isn't the absence of hardship, it's the decision to bow and keep breathing. When dawn finally streaks pale blue behind the clouds, you whisper a quiet promise to yourself: survive like they do. Bend, don't break, let the rain pass through you. It seems the only rule that ever works. The storm may have passed, but the air it left behind still clings like breath on glass. The rice fields shimmer again beneath the warming sun, but the ground squelches under every step. You follow the farmer along a narrow path lined with bamboo stakes, pretending you know what your knees are doing. Today, he says, you learn discipline. You groan automatically. Haven't I been doing that every day? He smirks. You've been working. Discipline's different. Work feeds the body. Discipline feeds the spirit. You are too noisy inside. So begins your introduction to the dojo. The building sits at the edge of the village, half hidden by cedar trees. It's smaller than you expect. No grand stone walls or roaring banners, just polished wood, sliding doors, and the faint smell of sweat turned sacred. A few apprentices kneel at the entrance, bowing so low their foreheads practically kiss the floor. You mimic them clumsily. Inside, the air feels carved from silence. Weapons line the wall: bokken, wooden swords, bamboo poles, even a few genuine katana that catch the sunlight like mirrors meant for gods. You don't touch them. You barely breathe. An older instructor appears, wiry frame, shaved head, eyes like river stones smoothed by years of repetition. You walk wrong, he says before you even speak. Too many thoughts in your knees. You glance helplessly at the farmer, who bows low. Sensely, my friend is ignorant, not impolite. I can see both, the old man replies, not unkindly. Training begins immediately. You're handed a bamboo sword, light, flexible, deceptively friendly, and told to stand with legs apart. Lower. Your thighs start to tremble before the lesson even begins. The instructor adjusts your grip, smacking your elbow lightly with another sword. You hold blade like you hold pride, he says. Too tight and both break. You swing once. It feels powerful for half a second before you nearly topple yourself. And livelihoods. The farmer laughs quietly in the corner until the instructor snaps. He laughs because his balance is also poor. He just hides it better. The session continues with endless repetition. Basic cuts, foot movements, stances. The dojo echoes with the sound of bamboo striking air, a rhythm that's oddly hypnotic. Sweat pools at your collarbone. The teacher walks the line of students, watching, saying little. When he stops in front of you, time freezes. He says simply, again. You do. Again. The swing improves slightly. Again. This repeats until the world narrows to movement. Inhale, cut, exhale, bow. Thought falls away, replaced by sensation. A trickle of sweat, the hiss of feet on wood, the thud of your breath. Somewhere in this repetition, exhaustion dissolves into focus. During the break, you sit outside beneath the eaves, sipping barley tea that tastes faintly like roasted patience. The farmer plops beside you and laughs. Not so noisy now, are you? Your shoulders achy. I think my spirit collapsed before my body did. That means improvement, he says cheerfully, sipping his tea. The sensei steps out then, leaning on his staff. You need purpose for discipline, he tells you. What is your purpose? You hesitate. To learn, you offer lamely. He shakes his head. Learning is dust. Application is wind. You must decide where to blow. Then, surprisingly, he smiles. But first you must learn to breathe. He demonstrates. Slow, deliberate inhalation through the nose, exhaling until the chest deflates completely. Breath roots the spirit, he explains. Without it, sword is just stick. A mainstream fact hums in your tired mind. Samurai training placed enormous emphasis on controlled breathing and meditation, disciplines imported partly from Zen Buddhism. The idea was to quiet emotion before combat so decisions cut cleaner than steel. Simple, terrifying logic. The sensei glances at your unfocused gaze and flicks your forehead. Thinking again. Stop that. Afternoon brings sparring. You pair with the farmer, each armed with shinai. The first exchange ends in your swift defeat, a bamboozled mess of flailing arms and questionable form. I win, he says cheerfully. The second match, you focus on breathing. The sound slows the chaos. You duck one strike on instinct, and even manage a gentle tap on his shoulder. For a second, real victory glimmers before a bamboo sting lands square on your ribs. Almost. He grins. The sensei calls for a halt. Technique follows stillness. Remember that. From the far end of the dojo, a younger apprentice slams his shinai too hard in frustration, splintering the tip. The instructor's gaze hardens. Lose temper. Lose harmony, he says quietly. Better to lose match. The words settle into air like fine dust. One quirky tidbit surfaces from the corners of your curious mind dig. Some samurai schools taught that the ultimate goal of martial arts wasn't victory but serenity. The calm so pure it could shame even violence into silence. Historians still argue whether that was philosophy or propaganda. But you realize how little difference it makes when everyone believes it. As evening stretches long shadows through the doorway, you kneel with the rest for closing bows. The floor beneath you radiates tired warmth. The sensei nods once, approvingly. Tomorrow, same lesson, he says. Every day, same lesson. Until death, same lesson. Then he grins faintly. The irony keeps things interesting. Outside, dusk paints the fields gold and violet. Walking home, your legs wobble with pride and pain in equal measure. The farmer claps your shoulder. Now you can fight mosquitoes with proper honor. You manage a laugh between breaths. Do they train as hard as we do? He nods solemnly. Harder? They never sleep. The two of you stumble down the hill, the air humming with cicadas, the sky glowing faintly pink. Your whole body aches, but a strange calm hums inside you. The same steady rhythm you heard in the dojo. Maybe that's the true lesson. Discipline isn't obedience or mastery. It's learning to find peace in exhaustion. Back at the farmhouse, you set your bamboo sword beside the door. The sound it makes on the wood floor feels permanent, like punctuation closing a day you'll remember longer than most. Tomorrow you'll ache even more. But tonight you sleep soundly, breath slow and even, no longer noisy inside. The next morning glows pale and hazy, steam lifting off the soaked fields like ghosts stretching after a long night. The farmer greets you before sunrise with 2 travel permits rolled and tied neatly with cord. "We go," he says, voice unusually serious. "Go where?" you ask, still rubbing sleep from your eyes. "Town to the east, a checkpoint." He ties a bundle to his back. Every road ends with men who ask questions. So begins your first real journey beyond the valley, out into the veins of Togawa, Japan, where every step tastes faintly of inspection. You leave before the heat thickens. The path climbs through cypress groves, dew beading on leaves the size of your palms. Birdsong echoes airily, as if the forest is speaking in verses only nature remembers. The farmer walks with steady rhythm, sandals slapping mud, while you trip over every rock with exquisite clumsiness. He doesn't tease this time. Travel day energy, you suspect, makes everyone quieter. After an hour, the road joins a wider one, filled with carts, palanquin bearers, and travelers hunched under straw hats. The farmer points at a signpost marked with calligraphy, a road of the Gokade network, one of 5 great highways connecting the country under the shogun's peace. "Edo's veins," he says. A mainstream fact bubbles up: these highways were the arteries of Tokugawa control, built not for convenience, but surveillance. The government wanted to keep commerce flowing and rebellion suffocating. Even travel, walking from one province to another, required stamped papers proving your loyalty and purpose. You grip your pass a little tighter. By mid-morning, dust and chatter fill the air. The road crests a low hill, revealing a cluster of low, thatched roof buildings surrounding a wooden gate. The Sekisho, a border checkpoint. 2 guards in half-armor stand lazily at the entrance, spears leaning against their shoulders. Their expressions say, routine, but their eyes say, "What are you hiding?" The farmer stops, bows, and presents the travel slips. The guard studies them silently, his lips twitching with boredom. Then his gaze slides toward you. "Not from this province," he murmurs, tapping the edge of your sleeve. You freeze. "No," you admit carefully. "I came to learn farming." Technically true, even if the time-traveling part might raise paperwork concerns. The guard's eyes narrow, then flick to the farmer. "Responsibility." The farmer nods. "Mine." He eats poorly but works hard. A pause. The guard snorts, scribbles something on a ledger, and waves you both through. "Don't cause headaches." You manage a bow so deep you nearly introduce your forehead to the dirt. The farmer pats your shoulder as you pass. "Now you've met bureaucracy. How does it feel?" "Wet palms," you mutter. Beyond the gate, the road widens into a busy post town, a blur of shops, stables, and tea houses catering to travelers. Somewhere, a shamisen plays jaunty tunes, competing with a hawker chanting prices for fried tofu. The smell of soy oil and horse sweat mingles in the air. The farmer explains how every checkpoint like this feeds the economy: officials, guards, merchants, innkeepers, all living off the flow of people. "Nothing moves without paper," he says. "Even gossip needs a seal." You catch glimpses of people from all walks of life: monks clutching staffs, samurai shielding themselves from sun with lacquered umbrellas, merchants with scrolls tucked into their belts. One man carefully leads a packhorse burdened with barrels stamped with the shogun's crest, the equivalent of national freight. Everyone moves with purpose. But everyone, you notice, also glances nervously at guards. A side street leads toward an inn where travelers sit cross-legged on raised platforms. You join the farmer at one of the benches. The server, a teenage boy, pours hot barley tea and slides over salt-flavored rice crackers. You bite into one. It's crisp, smoky, unexpectedly divine after hours of panic. "You see," the farmer says, Even rules feed mouths if you look right. A fringe historical debate surfaces, one about whether Tokugawa rule stifled progress or, paradoxically, created peace for creativity to flourish. Historians still argue whether checkpoints like these preserved order or strangled opportunity. Watching the disciplined chaos here, you suspect both can be true. After tea, curiosity wins. You wander toward the post house where couriers change horses for the official mail service, Haikiku. The speed is impressive. Messengers darting in and out, scrolls tied in waterproof cloth. You ask the clerk how often messages travel from Edo to Kyoto. 3 days, full relay, he says proudly. If legs don't break. That's faster than you expected for a world without motors. You marvel quietly at the efficiency, the invisible system humming behind every ritual bow. Nearby, a notice board displays wooden placards listing local edicts. Rules about curfews, taxis, road repairs, and, oddly, hairstyles. You read one aloud. Unauthorized top-knot styles will be disciplined. The farmer sighs. They say even hair must obey the shogun. You decide not to check your reflection. By late afternoon, clouds roll in again, casting long shadows across the road. You pass merchants offering dried persimmons for half a coin, children selling paper fans painted with waves and cranes. The town feels alive but wary, constantly glancing over its shoulder. One quirky superstition catches your ear when a tea house owner explains the charms hanging above her door, wooden gourds painted red. "To trap evil spirits thirsty for travelers' misfortune," she says proudly. You look around. Every door on the street bears one. Historians still argue whether gourds warded sickness or served as early marketing for liquor shops. But here, faith clings to anything that helps business. As twilight deepens, you and the farmer begin the return journey. Checkpoint guards not half asleep, barely acknowledging your exit. The mountains far off glow gold where the sun finally cuts below the clouds. You walk silently for a while until the farmer says, "It's strange. We live our whole lives in one valley, yet the paper of some man in Edo decides if we can walk to the next." You look back at the fading checkpoint lights. And yet, you say, those same papers make sure no one kills you for crossing the wrong hill. He chuckles softly. Balance again. You keep walking until fireflies crow the path, your sandals slapping puddles left by the morning rain. The night breeze smells faintly of cedar and road dust. By the time the farmhouse lantern comes into view, you're bone-tired but oddly comforted. Order here may be suffocating, but within it, people still find motion. Like streams winding obediently around stones yet always running toward the sea. You glance at the stamped permit tucked into your sleeve. A slip of paper, smaller than a hand, yet capable of deciding fate. You whisper, half amused, half reverent. All travel is time travel, really. And somewhere behind you, the checkpoint drums beat faintly in the night. Steady, certain, human. The next morning arrives with a brittle calm, the kind that makes you suspicious. Birds chirp like normal, sunlight glitters across the flooded paddies, but there's tension in the wind. You sense it before anyone says a word. Then the farmer points uphill, toward the road that leads out of the village. "Officials came last night," he mutters. "Someone broke the rules." You follow him, wary. Half the village has already gathered near the shrine, murmuring. A wooden post stands in the square, freshly planted, its bark stripped and edge polished. At its base lies a bamboo scroll brushed with writing so careful it feels surgical. The characters announce an edict. Theft of rice under the daimyo's protection is punishable by exposure and shame. The farmer's jaw tightens. Someone stole grain. You glance at the crowd. Peasants whisper, some shake their heads, others avoid eye contact entirely. It feels like static in the air, fear dressed as silence. You ask, "What happens now?" He sighs, "Public lesson." And so, today you learn about punishment in feudal Japan, the cold, efficient kind. By mid-morning, guards arrive, ash-colored armor gleaming under the sun. They carry a tied man between them. His face is bruised. But his expression, not shame, not even fear, just exhaustion. You recognize him faintly, the porter who traded salt and gossip at the last market. A samurai official steps forward, unrolling a scroll of charges. He reads them like poetry, his voice calm and unmoving, every syllable echoing off wood and sky. The word theft punctures the air like a hammer stroke. The punishment is simple exposure, not execution, not dismemberment, just humiliation by display. His wrists tied, a sign hung around his neck naming his offense, his place at the center square for 2 days. You think it could be worse, until you see the faces around him. The villagers have turned to stone. Even pity looks dangerous. You realize the power of this ritual isn't pain, it's separation. Shame makes people gods of distance. A quiet settles that's heavier than any storm. The guards leave, muttering rules to no one in particular. The bound man slumps under the glare. No one moves. Then an elderly woman sneaks over and leaves a bowl of water near his feet before shuffling away. The act is small but radiant, like defiance disguised as kindness. Historians still argue whether punishments like this were deterrence or performance. But standing here, you can feel both. The spectacle meant to remind everyone what law actually looks like, not justice, but fear painted in ceremony. The afternoon presses on. The sun slants low, throwing strange halos across the rice paddies. Life continues because it musting farmers return to fields, artisans to their tools, yet every motion feels cautious, rehearsed. Even laughter sounds half swallowed. At dinner that night, the family eats in near silence. The children whisper questions the mother doesn't answer. Finally, the farmer sets his bowl down. They call it order, he says. We call it warning. You nod slowly, so everyone beeves. He looks at you sharply. No, he says, everyone endures. The next morning, a breeze sweeps the mist through the valley. You find yourself walking back to the square before dawn. The man is still there, slumped in sleep or prayer. The sign on his neck fluttering faintly. The bowl is empty. You refill it from the well. For a moment, his eyes flick open. Tired, half grateful, half resigned. He doesn't speak. Maybe he can't. A guard nearby clears his throat, and you step back quickly. The hierarchy reasserts itself faster than thought. Even charity has boundaries. The farmer appears behind you, bringing a folded cloth. Come, he says quietly. Time to work. You hesitate. Can't anyone help him? He shakes his head. Help is what gets us punished next. There's no bitterness in his tone. Just math. Cost and consequence. Perfectly balanced. On the trek back to the fields, you notice something odd. The storm-damaged canal has collapsed again, leaving a wash of mud choking the irrigation line. The farmer curses softly, and the two of you spend hours clearing it by hand. Mud up to your knees, the stink of wet earth thick as glue. Eventually, you suggest using some bamboo stalks from the grove as support beams. He freezes. You talk like an official, he says, half smiling. That's bad. For you. Maybe. He shrugs. For me, useful. It's strange. Amid all this fear, work still feels neutral. The canal, at least, doesn't care who wields the shovel. The act of fixing the land offers sanity where the rules don't. That night, as dusk thickens into velvet, a different kind of ceremony unfolds. Villagers gather at the shrine again, not for punishment this time, but purification. They light candles, clap twice, bow, and murmur prayers for the safety of the harvest. The atmosphere is fragile but tender, like forgiveness whispered behind authority's back. A mainstream fact rolls through your thoughts. Feudal justice in Japan was built on an idea called jeri, social obligation binding every role, every punishment. Even mercy required permission. That system survived for centuries because it mimicked nature itself, predictable, unyielding, but not quite cruel enough to shatter. The Tide Man isn't there anymore. His absence feels louder than any chant. Only the stripped post remains, torchlight flickering over it like restless water. You stand beside the farmer as the fire crackles. He says quietly, "We tell our children the rules keep us safe. What we mean is they keep us quiet. You stare at the glow, replying softly, maybe that's safety enough. He exhales slowly. Neither agreement nor refusal. Just a sound threaded with the fatigue of an entire nation balancing on ceremony. When the candles die out, the night folds inward. You walk home in silence under the red smear of the rising moon. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks at nothing, and it sounds almost like protest. Morning returns with a softness that almost hurts to look at. Gold light spilling over damp thatch, children's laughter echoing faintly down the lane, the smell of miso soup drifting lazily through cracks in the wall. You wake to find the farmer already gone. Only his wife sits by the hearth, threading a needle through pale cloth with unhurried grace. "You will help me today," she says, motioning to the stool beside her. Men work in the fields. Women keep the world from falling apart. Her tone isn't proud or bitter. It's just fact. You nod, easing down beside her. The room smells of rice starch, soap, and faint wood smoke. The sunlight catches the fine strands of her grey hair, turning them into silver threads. The first task seems simple, patching torn sleeves. Your stitches start too wide, then too shallow. She corrects you without looking up. Even repairs require rhythm. The fabric must trust your hands. You concentrate harder, pretending you're sewing peace treaties instead of cotton. She chuckles. You stab the poor cloth like enemy soldier. Gentle, or it will fray. You can't tell whether you're being trained or teased. While you fumble, she begins talking. Small talk at first, about the new barley sprouting after the storm, about the fox she saw stealing eggs behind the granary. But gradually the conversation deepens, sliding into things people rarely say aloud. "My mother taught me this stitch," she says. "She said good thread can fix anything but silence." "That one, you meant by speaking?" You ask about her family. She laughs quietly. "You mean my husband's family." In this time, names pass down through men. Women join households but rarely own them. A mainstream fact rises from the back of your minding. Women in Edo period Japan live within strict social hierarchy, expected to obey fathers, husbands, even sons. Some managed stores or estates when men were away, but the law itself never bowed to them. Yet, behind the walls, they shaped everything from commerce to household diplomacy. The farmer's wife, call her Akiko now, as the others do when no hierarchy is listening, speaks as she works. Men fight storms and lords, she says, but women fight time. It pulls everything apart. She gestures at the cloth in her lap. We just keep tying it back together. The words settle over you heavier than you expect. Later, you follow her to the communal well. Women gather there like clockwork, washing, gossiping, sharing secrets disguised as chores. Soup bubbles trail down the path while laughter rises in bright bursts. You listen as they discuss births, seasons, prices, and occasionally, softly, grievances. One woman grumbles about taxes, another about her husband's drinking. A third tells a scandalous story about the daimyo's concubine who apparently ran away disguised as a nun. They all choke back laughter, covering mouths with wet sleeves. A co catches your expression. We keep the world running, but talking keeps us alive. Silence makes ghosts out of women. A child nearby hands her a sprig of flowers, and she tucks it behind the girl's ear. The simple gesture is its own act of rebellion, a private vocabulary of care in a world that demands obedience. At midday, you help Akiko grind grain into flour for noodles. Her motions are measured, hypnotic. "This," she says, "is also power. The one who feeds controls who eats." She adds after a pause, "We never called it power, of course. We just called it kitchen work." You ask if she's ever dreamed of leaving the village. She smiles sadly. "Women leave when they marry, not when they want. But our minds travel farther than any road." A quirky historical tidbit bubbles up you during this era. Women often exchanged handwritten poems on slips of paper, folded neatly into fans or tied to gifts. Coded communications of love, regret, or wit. Historians still argue whether these were resistance or romance. but their survival proves something stubborn about voice. Akiko hums as she stirs the dough. You recognize the melody faintly from the wedding weeks ago, a lullaby with verses about seasons returning and hearts enduring. We sing, she explains, so no one forgets who we are. Evening settles in layers of amber and indigo. You and Akiko join other women to weave straw mats under the porch. The rustle of stalks mixes with cicadas, creating a steady, low harmony. Across the yard, the men return from the fields, mud-legged bent, humming the same tune she sang. When the farmer spots you working among the women, he raises a brow. Learning the important things. I see. His wife smiles serenely. He's learning not to tear what others mend. Laughter ripples through the group. For once, no one bows, no one apologizes. It's gentle mischief, but it lifts the air like wind into sails. After the weaving's done, Akiko stands, brushing the straw from her knees. Tomorrow, she says to you, come early. I will show you something better than sewing. You ask what? She winks. Patience. At that night, as you lie on your mat, you can hear quiet murmurs through the thin wall. The farmer and Akiko talking in half whispers, the language of people who share both burden and warmth. His voice rough, tired, softening only for her. Her sense measured and sure, the one constant tone that calms storms and livelihoods. You close your eyes and think about how much invisible weight she carries, all the unseen hands that keep this fragile society stitched together. If history remembers her at all, it will likely misname the work as domestic, minor, background. But you know better now. She and millions like her aren't background. They're the loom itself. And when you drift into sleep, you imagine those hands reaching through centuries, steady, deft, and enduring. The next few days pass in quiet rhythm, broken only by the hum of cicadas and the creak of bamboo. Then, one evening, a rumor cuts through the tranquility like the edge of a sword. The potter from the next village arrives at the farmer's door, soaked with sweat and urgency. Ships, he gasps, foreign ones, seen off the southern coast. The farmer frowns. More traders. The potter shakes his head. Bigger. Iron hulls, they say. Cannons, smoke that smells like lightning. You feel the air tighten. This, you realize, is the beginning of something larger. The tremor before history changes. By morning, word has spread. Every visitor brings a new version: Portuguese sailors, Dutch merchants, Chinese smugglers, or ghosts of drowned warriors. No one agrees, but everyone agrees it's bad. And livelihoods. The village headman gathers people near the shrine to read an official notice written on pale wood, stamped with the shogunate's seal. All contact with foreign vessels is forbidden. Those who approach them will be punished as traitors. He pauses for breath, then looks around sternly. Remember, Japan is closed for peace. That phrase lingers. Closed for peace. It sounds less like security and more like a lid shutting tight. A mainstream fact surfaces from memory. The Edo government enforced sakoku, a policy of isolation begun in the 1630s, allowing only limited trade through Nagasaki under Dutch supervision. For 2 centuries, Japan sealed itself like a jar of preserved austerity, convinced that foreign influence meant decay. And now, 2 centuries later, that jar is beginning to rattle. The farmer mutters as the crowd disperses. Peace built on walls never lasts. He glances at you. Still, we're too small to notice when walls crack. Later that afternoon, merchants hurry through the valley, their carts piled high with dried goods and muttered headlines. Foreign cannons. One whispers. They fire from miles away. No one returns fire because no one can. Another man counters. Bah. Ghost stories to raise prices. You catch overlapping details: dark steam clouds, flags with red stripes, men whose hair glitters yellow under sun. Even half-truths feel electric with possibility. You can feel the farm trembling beneath its calm, as if every rice plant senses the shockwave miles away. That night, over a sparse dinner, the farmer and his wife speak softly. If the shogun opens the ports, taxes rise, she says. Lords need silver for their pride. He nods, staring into the fire. And if he doesn't, famine comes again. Foreign trade brings grain and medicine, but also guns. She sighs, turning to you. You've seen such ships, haven't you? Your heart lurches. You meet her gaze and decide to answer carefully. In my world, yes, they changed everything. Quickly, the farmer laughs grimly. Quickly, then we won't survive it. You want to say something reassuring, but history has already written the ending. This still, rigid society is about to collide with modernity, and modernity tends to win, whether it's right or not. 2 days later, officials arrive from the coastal prefecture, traveling with scrolls and frowns. You help the village prepare offerings of rice, hoping to look dutiful enough to avoid questions. The head official's robe gleams dark violet, embroidered with the shogunate crest. His speech is crisp, practiced, and empty. Rumors exaggerate foreign strength, he declares. Even if ships appear, our divine nation stands untouchable. Fear invites chaos invites punishment. The villagers bow, compliance is reflex. Yet his eyes linger too long, measuring. When he leaves, you catch a trace of sweat near his temples. Bureaucrats can smell fear too. Historians still argue about whether these smaller coastal sightings in the 1840s were exaggerated panic or prescient alarm. But you know enough to recognize foreshadowing. Another 2 decades, maybe less, and American gunboats will arrive demanding trade. Commodore Perry's Black Ships, 1853. The day modern Japan begins by ending the old one. Meanwhile, daily life continues its disguise of normalcy. You help ferry bundles of firewood across the hillside. Children chase dragonflies as if time itself hasn't soared. But you notice subtle changes. The priest prays longer at the shrine. The samurai messenger who visits weekly now rides faster and speaks less. Akiko hums her usual lullaby but stops halfway through distracted. If the world opens, she muses, will God still listen in Japanese? The question startles you. Maybe the gods speak whatever language keeps people quiet. You say before catching yourself. But she just smiles faintly, as though she's thought the same thing. That evening, thunder unfolds over the distant sea. The sound echoes through the valley like a rival drum. Standing beneath the eaves, you gaze toward the faint horizon where mountains fade into haze and wonder if the storm hides more than rain. The farmer joins you. When new things come, he says, they never ask permission. You nod, feeling cold despite the humidity. When new things come, you echo. Old ones pretend to be invisible until they can't. He chuckles softly. And you? You would survive it. You think for a moment, I'd like to think so. In my time, the world changes every day and still never feels finished. He squints at the rolling clouds. Then maybe time is the same storm, changing roofs, never resting. The thunder draws closer, but it's only weather this time. Still, you can't shake the weight of impending change. As the first drops fall, the farmer's wife slides the door shut, murmuring, the rain sounds different tonight. You listen. She's right. It sounds heavier, like footsteps marching toward the future, echoing down centuries that are about to crack open. Somewhere beyond the darkness, ships drift closer, their masts slicing fog, carrying smoke that smells like lightning. And tomorrow, this valley, this quiet cradle of patience, will still wake as always, plant rice, bow to hierarchy, and hum its lullabies. But history has already turned its face toward it. You fall asleep to the thunder and realize you're hearing 2 worlds colliding, the old one whispering its final prayers, and the new one clearing its throat. By morning, the air has changed again. The storm passes, but in its wake lies a silence that feels like suspension, a held breath stretched across the whole valley. Even the birds hesitate. The farmer says nothing over breakfast, just chews methodically as though deciding what silence can or cannot say. The rice fields shimmer green and gold under gentle mist. Everything looks the same on the surface, but you feel a hum beneath it. The kind of invisible energy that comes before history takes visible shape. The headman arrives just after sunrise, face tight, robes hanging unevenly. The Shogun has spoken, he announces flatly. Isolation remains law. Trade with foreigners is treason. His voice trembles slightly on the last word, as if even saying it risks summoning punishment. The farmer sighs once, long and slow. The old man still thinks walls can stop the tide. You glance toward the sea, miles away but undeniable. The horizon looks harmless, too still to threaten anything. Yet somehow, its stillness feels alive. Later that day, you walk to the temple perched on the ridge. The path winds through moss and cedar, the air cool and resin-sweet. Monks chant inside in deep, rhythmic unison. Centuries of ritual compressed into sound. You kneel at the steps, not out of faith, but out of respect for endurance. An elderly monk approaches with sandals whispering against the stone. His robe ripples faintly in the breeze painted with incense. You carry noise in your heart, he says. Storms leave more than rain. You blink. Noise, he smiles. You think of the ships. You exhale, half laughing. Does everyone think of them? He shrugs. Everyone dreams of edges. The sea is ours, but we fear its mirrors. In every age something foreign arrives. In every age men pretend surprise. His eyes crinkle kindly. Even gods learn new languages. It sounds suspiciously like heresy for a cleric, but the peace in his face keeps you quiet. He continues, to close a gate is simple. To close the mind, more dangerous. A nation that never changes forgets why it exists. A mainstream fact surfaces in your thoughts. Japan's elite believed the Saku policy protected their culture from contamination, yet thinkers within the era, Confucian scholars like Arai Hakuseki and later reformers, had already begun questioning whether isolation was strength or stagnation. The debate hummed quietly for years before the canons ever appeared on shore. You realize this monk might be one of those quiet radicals, philosophers disguised as pacifists. When you return to the village, the farmers are meeting near the rice paddies. The discussion is low and worried. Trade from the coast has already stalled. Salt and oil shipments delayed indefinitely. The taxes will not delay, someone mutters. The headman raises his scroll. The daimyo demands extra tribute this month. Offerings for the gods to protect us from contamination. You watch shoulders sag, mouths tighten. The gods. The farmer mutters under his breath. Must be very hungry this year. They pay because refusal is death. And death here rarely wears armor. You help lift sacks of rice onto the ox cart bound for the castle storehouse. Each one feels like a fragment of hope leaving the valley. That afternoon, the sky clears. You and the farmer stand at the irrigation channel watching water trickle in perfect symmetry, a small miracle against the chaos beyond. Funny, he says. The shogun shuts the ports, but gods still let the sea breathe for everyone. You nod. Maybe gods prefer circulation. He gives you a sidelong glance. You speak like the monk now. The faintest grin tugs his mouth before fading. Still, peace is peace, even when it's stupid. He throws a stone into the water and watches it sink without ripples. I'd rather stupid peace than clever war. The phrase lands heavy. Historians still debate this dilemma. Whether Togawa Japan's isolation prevented invasion or condemned the nation to cultural claustrophobia. Both truths coexist, safety and suffocation intertwined like rice roots. As dusk falls, a soft glow pulls you to the shrine behind the farm. Akiko stands there, arranging fresh flowers beneath the fox statue. We offer these, she says, for the calm between changes. You crouch beside her. Do you think calm can survive forever? She shakes her head gently. Calm isn't meant to last. It's meant to rest on. Like the breath before you move again. The simple wisdom stirs something deep. The way she accepts impermanence. The way people here have learned to balance between stability and surrender. Maybe that's the secret endurance of this era. It never rushes joy or despair. It simply absorbs both and keeps sowing. You help her place the last blossom. The petals glow faint blue under twilight, trembling in the wind like everything else built on devotion. Later, clouds gather again, soft but insistent. The farmer sits by the sliding door sharpening his sickle with rhythmic patience. Each metallic scrape sparks faintly in the lantern light. "If the world opens," he says quietly, "maybe my son will see more than mud and grain." You catch his eyes, lit by the reflection of flame. Would you want that for him? He pauses mid-motion. Want? Maybe not. But he'll face it anyway. Every father feeds a future that won't listen. His words stay with you long after the lantern burns low. That night, you wake to the faint echo of a horn from somewhere beyond the hills, long low, unsure. The farmer stirs but doesn't move, half asleep. You step outside. Moonlight pools, silver across paddies glimmering like wet glass. In the far distance, flickers of light tremble near the horizon. Maybe fishermen's torches, maybe something else entirely. You breathe in the smell of salt, and though the sea lies miles away, you swear you can hear the faint, rhythmic hiss of waves colliding with iron. Tomorrow life will go on as before. Rice, taxes, silence. But deep down, Japan is shifting. You can feel it in the ground, in the air, in the murmurs of monks and peasants and gossiping winds. And when it finally breaks open, you already know this valley will never be the same. Dawn breaks muddy and pink, the kind of sky that feels too fragile to belong to normal weather. You hear distant hammering long before you see anyone, a sharp metallic pulse rolling through the valley in time with the morning bell. By the time you reach the village square, half the men are already assembling wooden frames. "What's happening?" you ask the farmer. He wipes sweat from his neck. "Edict from the castle. New storehouses for tax grain. They say famine's coming again. They say a lot of things." He shrugs, but the rhythm of his strikes is harder than usual. All around, people work in silence broken only by coughs and the occasional clang of iron. The smells of carpentry blend with the sour odor of damp straw and uncertainty. History's slow wheel has started to turn again. Over the next days, word travels from traders trekking in by night. Whole provinces to the south are starving. An outbreak of plague near one of the coastal ports. Rice yields down because storm floods cut irrigation. Prices rising like fever. For the first time since arriving here, you feel the edges of collapse brushing reality. Even the confident harmony that once defined village life now seems splitting one stitch at a time. "We plant, we pray, we pay," the farmer mutters as he plows, and still the gods take interest. Yet despite the hunger shadow, authority still demands face. Soldiers arrive to inspect the granaries, lacquered armor glinting under heavy skies. Their leader reads an order without expression. Villagers must increase contribution by 1/4 to compensate for loss elsewhere. There's an audible ripple through the crowd. More astonishment than protest. No one dares speak first. One old man drops his hoe and whispers just loud enough for you to catch it. "They feed cities we'll never see." The soldier hears, stripes tighten across his jaw, and he gestures sharply. Two peasants step forward, grab the old man by his wrist. They drag him aside, not roughly, but efficiently. And he's gone into the boredom of authority. The rest of you bend back to work. That's how rebellion dies, hearing not with rage, but with rhythm. That evening, the air feels heavy with dust that rises even when no one moves. The marketplace glows under torchlight, but no one laughs. Vendors have less rice, more millet, more excuses. A merchant tells you quietly about groups forming uprisings near Edo. Farmers raiding rice stores, shouting prayers to deities of fairness. Ikki, they call it. Peasant revolts. Historians still argue whether these retaliations were organized movements or desperate mobs, but standing here you can feel how desperation grows geometry. Hunger gives shape to courage. The farmer shakes his head at the story. "Rebellion only feeds the crows," he says. Still, sometimes hunger wants company. A strange tension presses between you. Admiration and fear. Days blur into each other. Grain shipments leave under guard. The village grows quiet again, dull from exhaustion. Then one afternoon, a whisper spreads like brush firing. The samurai collectors will return next week too. just contributions. The farmer spits into the dirt. A just means take what's left. He glances toward his wife sorting grain by hand. Her movements are steady, deliberate, but her eyes shine wet. You look around, children playing near empty baskets, chickens sold off, water levels shrinking. It's an equation that can't hold. Remember the man they punished, the farmer says suddenly. Maybe he wasn't a thief. Maybe he was hungry first. The thought feels dangerous, standing even a breath away from soldiers, yet you nod because it's true. By twilight, the wind shifts cold. Smoke curls low across the fields, carrying the scent of something burning beyond the ridge. In the distance, faint figures move. Small groups of people with bundles and tools, walking fast but not looking back. Refugees. One woman pauses as she passes the outer huts, bowing toward the shrine. "Forgive us," she whispers to no one you can see. Akiko brings what little barley she has to the doorstep, leaving it in a bowl under a cloth. "If they're running, they'll find it," she says. You ask quietly, "Isn't that dangerous?" She smiles without humor. So is starving. That night, the farmer and a few others gather discreetly in the barn. You're invited mostly because curiosity is now your citizenship. The lantern light paints everyone's faces in bronze shadows. "They'll come again," one man says. "If we hide the surplus, they'll take our lives instead." A different voice answers, calmer, older. "Hide the surplus anyway. Life without grain is already half gone." The farmer stays silent for a long time before adding softly, "We can't fight, and we can't flee, so maybe we vanish instead." No one understands at first. Then he explains, "Bury the extra sacks in the unused well near the edge of the fields. Seal it under stones. Mark the spot with nothing but memory." It's reckless, but not madness. The others agree wordlessly. You help them under moonlight, sweat cold as fear. Bags of rice descend into darkness like prayers swallowed by earth. Each sound of grain sliding down echoes longer than expected. By the time dawn leaks pink again, the well is sealed tight, and no sign remains except the ache in your arms and the adrenaline in your chest. For days afterward, life proceeds in imitation of obedience. When the tax collectors finally arrive, they count, measure, nod. Pleased by compliance that's entirely theater. No one flinches under inspection. The village performs normalcy so flawlessly it becomes almost art. The guards depart with what remains of the stores, leaving quiet behind like an aftertaste. That night, the farmer kneels by the hearth, hands muddy but steady. "If the gods forgive liars who survive," he murmurs, "maybe they'll forgive farmers too." Akiko rests her palm on his. "If the gods understand hunger, they already have." You watch the exchange through flickering firelight, realizing that rebellion here doesn't wear swords. It hides in small acts of defiance, buried like rice beneath stone. Somewhere in this subdued deceit lies the start of change, tender as a seed waiting under impossible soil. Outside, a dry wind sweeps across the paddies, carrying dust but also promise. The stars look closer tonight, as if leaning in to see what small bravery human vent to endure themselves. Tomorrow, peace will wear its mask again, and you'll all bow to the proper rhythms. But under your feet, somewhere in the dark belly of the well, sleeps enough hope to outlast famine. And in this country of restraint and endurance, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. A week slips by, soft as steam from boiling rice, uneventful on the surface yet humming with nervous quiet. The rains hold off, sunlight returning to paint everything deceptively calm. But beneath that calm, a feeling spreads, like roots threading through soil after too much pressure. Even the birds seem to sing with hesitation. One morning, while walking to the fields, you notice children standing near the edge of the forest, staring at something reflecting sunlight. Following their gaze, you see a uniform, armor scattered across the mud, abandoned. A samurai's chess piece, lacquer cracked, crest chipped. Someone left his honor behind. You whisper. The farmer grimaces. Or someone ran out of it. By noon, the rumor blooms full growing. Bandits are moving through the region. Former retainers stripped of power, now scavenging like wolves among unguarded villages. The officials haven't returned since their last inspection either. Too busy protecting castles. The Potter mutters. No time for the people who feed them. That night, the headman lights the old watch fire in the square. A gesture half tradition, half omen. Villagers arrange shifts, keeping someone awake until dawn as if alertness alone could hold the dark at bay. Do they come often? You ask the farmer. He spits into the dirt. Every time a daimyo's belly empties. He's not wrong. A mainstream fact surfaces in your mind. Late Edo Japan was riddled with small peasant revolts and roaming ronin. Warriors without masters. Victims of their own system, turned their swords against the peasants who once bowed to them. The rigid peace that had lasted centuries was cracking under economic strain and bureaucratic rot. 2 nights pass without incident. Then, on the third, the dogs start barking before moonrise. A sound like thunder in heels. Boots rushing through wet grass. When you peer through the paper shutters, silhouettes flash along the embankment. Shouts follow, muffled but sharp. Barn. The farmer hisses, grabbing a tool handle more hope than weapon. Akiko shoves the children under the floorboards. You feel the air in the room stretch thin, seconds pulling wider with fear. A crash, voices, then silence again. When the shouting returns, it's accompanied by the sound of wood splitting. Someone's forcing open the granary door. The one that's almost, but not quite, empty. You freeze. The hidden vault under the old well suddenly feels heavier than any secret alive. The farmer signals toward the door. Stay here, he whispers, but you follow anyway. Adrenaline makes courage stupid. Out near the paddies, torchlight wobbles in the drizzle. 4 men stand there, faces hidden under straw hats too clean for real farmers. One yanks open what's left of the granary shutters. The leader, tall and broad-shouldered, shouts over the rain. The roadmen took your rice. We're taking what they left. Then you're no better than them. The farmer shoots back. His words slice through rain. The leader's head tilts. Difference is, I know I'm stealing. For a suspended heartbeat, everything freezes, until a distant shout from someone unseen cuts through. Guards! The bandits scatter instantly. A dark blur rushes past you, shoulders slamming yours hard enough to knock the breath out. Torchlight drops, hissing out in mud. Then just darkness, and rain beginning again, softer this time. At dawn, the well keepers find one of the men's straw hats snagged on a fence post. No bodies, no blood. The farmer leans against the railing, breathing hard. Maybes, they'll remember this village isn't worth dying for. You nod, though the truth feels heavier. Desperation doesn't remember anything. It just moves. The bailiff arrives that afternoon, demanding details, counting rice again. He glares at what's missing and sneers. You peasants breed cows. Without your pagan excuses, this land would stay pure. Akiko bows low. Then purity must be hungry, she says quietly. The man blinks, unamused, and rides off. You glance at her. Hell report that. I pray he does, she replies. Let someone in the castle know what hunger sounds like. That evening, the village gathers near the shrine once more. The rain has burned itself down to a gentle mist. Even the elders look smaller tonight, unsure who leads when every direction is wrong. We survive the same way as always, the headman declares. We wait. The word sends a ripple of disappointment. Waiting feels unbearable when storms, of weather, of history, close in. The farmer shakes his head. Waiting isn't living, he mutters to you. It's drowning in slow motion. As the crowd disperses, the old monk from the temple steps forward from the fog, his staff thudding softly in the mud. Everyone bows instinctively. He surveys the faces, then speaks almost conversationally. You think the gods test you. They do not. He pauses, letting the mist gather. They stopped testing long ago. Now they only watch what you build after breaking. The silence that follows is absolute. Even the night insects fade to reverent quiet. Historians would later call this period Bakumatsu, the end of the Shogunate and the beginning of something raw and uncertain. But to these faces, it's just the sound of wood creaking before collapse. Afterward, you walk home alongside the farmer. The air smells of burnt torches and wet earth. You think he's right. You ask that we're supposed to build something new. He looks toward the distant hills, rain pearled along his lashes. "We're peasants," he says simply. "We build or starve." Maybe that's enough philosophy for one life. At the house, Akiko waits by the fire, a hot bowl of broth ready though she's clearly exhausted. When the farmer sits, she rests her head briefly on his shoulder. Neither speak. Their small moment of still tenderness feels louder than any sermon. You realize this is what rebuilding truly looks like. Not revolutions or decrees, but exhausted people surviving one more night together. Outside, the fog curls low, hugging rooftops like hands reluctant to let go. Beyond it, unseen but undeniable, new winds already gather. The beginning after the end. Tomorrow will feel the same, but history has already changed direction. It begins quietly, the way spring always begins in Japan, hesitant, perfumed by thawed soil and plum blossoms that bloom before they're sure winter's done with them. The fields lie half flooded, half ready, mirroring a sky that still can't decide between sunlight and rain. You wake up with the feeling that something enormous has shifted, though nothing appears different at first glance. The farmer is outside, carving new channels in the paddies. Akiko hums the same song she's sung for months, but her voice sounds lighter. The children chase frogs instead of hiding under the floor. Even the air itself feels undecided, as if the future is somewhere just off screen, waiting. By midday, travelers from the east arrive, carrying news that doesn't fit inside the world you know. The shogun has fallen. One whispers near the well. Edo's banners are down. The emperor rules again. The farmer pauses mid-stride, muddy hand frozen around his hoe. Impossible, he says automatically. But impossibility lost its definition months ago. The words ripple outward like wind through reeds. Restoration, surrender, fire, change. History is unfolding in real time, though here, so far from power, it sounds more like gossip than revolution. A mainstream fact flickers at the edge of your thoughts. 1868, the Meiji Restoration. Japan opening its gates after 2.5 centuries of isolation. The shogunate dissolved, everything rewritten in the name of progress. You already know what comes next. Railroads, factories, Western clothes, the samurai fading into uniforms and wages instead of swords and stipends. You've walked this ghost road long enough to feel both joy and mourning. But to the peasants standing under the plum trees, it's just another story from far away. Bread doesn't rise faster when governments change. That night, the villagers gather around a communal fire. The headman, suddenly nervous, reads a notice from the nearby log. A new era begins. The old orders dissolve. Taxes remain. The crowd laughs. Tired, hollow, honest. Change looks suspiciously like the same thing in new handwriting. Only the monk smiles faintly. Every ending is a beginning pretending to understand itself, he murmurs. The farmer snorts. I'll begin again after breakfast. You can't help but admire them. The way they absorb history like the weather, adapting without illusions. Maybe that's why their stories have lasted this long. In the following days, the landscape transforms almost imperceptibly. Messengers pass through more often, their satchels stamped with new government symbols. Merchants now speak of Tokyo instead of Edo. A few samurai wander through wearing Western-cut jackets, and confusion in equal measure. The children follow them, wide-eyed. One morning, you see something miraculous on the horizon, a trail of thin smoke that isn't from any fire you know. A train. Steam and steel slicing through the earth like an idea arrived too early. The farmer squints as the sound reaches the valley, half thunder, half heartbeat. A demon with wheels, he guesses. Maybe, you say softly. Maybe a promise. He grins crookedly. Promises eat just as much as demons. Still, he doesn't look away. One afternoon, Akiko finds you sitting near the old well, the one that still hides the buried rice. She brushes dust from her sleeves and joins you. The air smells of wet iron and new weeds. "Do you think they'll find it one day?" she asks, nodding toward the sealed stones. "Maybe," you answer. "Maybe they'll dig and think it's treasure." She laughs gently. "Maybe they'll think it's hope." Then, quieter, "Or maybe it will stay where it is, feeding the earth that fed us." You realize she's not talking about rice anymore. As weeks unfold into early summer, the rhythm of life steadies but feels subtly altered. Songs in the fields change tempo, robes loosen into lighter fabrics colored with new imported dyes. Somewhere far north, foreign ships unload machines that smell like coal and revolution. Here, you still fall asleep to frogs and rain. The farmer sits outside one evening, polishing the same how he's used for 20 years. Its blade glimmers gold in the fading light. "So we survived," he says quietly. "No wars here, no fires, just another sunrise." "Not just," you say. "Survival is its own invention." He studies you for a moment, then nods. "Then you'll tell people, in your time, how long it takes to learn that lesson." You promise silently that you will. Night folds over the farmhouse like a calm exhale, slow and tender. Candles dim to starlight, cicadas melting into quiet rustle. The rain that touched every storm, every harvest, now moves softly against the roof. No longer threat, just lullaby. You lie on the tatami mat, the room warm with the scent of straw and wood smoke. Each sound drifts in gentle succession. The soft splash of water in the paddies, the steady sigh from sleeping children, the creak of bamboo eaves breathing in rhythm with the wind, and livelihoods. You think of everything you've seen, the sweat of farmers, the shadows of samurai, the songs of women threading survival through silence, and it feels less like history and more like heartbeat. Outside, a night heron glides low across the moonlit water, wings barely whispering. The world feels endless now, open, forgiving. You close your eyes as the first hints of dawn stretch pale along the horizon. The future hums beyond it, louder, brighter, impatient. But here, tonight, you've found stillness inside the noise. This land of rice and ritual, of storms and silence, taught you something no book could. That endurance is its own kind of grace. And when your breath finally slows to match the rhythm of the rain, you understand what Akiko meant. That hope, like grain, is livelihoods, is beft buried, waiting for the right season to rise. Sweet dreams.